We're going to start, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would please just stay standing after the pledge, that would be wonderful.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just wanted to make note that we learned recently that Ms. Dubles, the assistant principal here at Tohoto, lost her son unexpectedly on Sunday. His name was Doug Hutchins, and he was 27 years old. The school committee would like to extend their most heartfelt condolences during a painful time, distressing time for the family and for the students. So could we have just a moment of silence in memory of Doug and in care and support of the students? Thank you. So I just want to explain the structure of tonight's meeting a little bit for anyone who may be live streaming in particular. In fact, we're live streaming, so the first thing is just a reminder that your voice or image may be seen tonight, maybe broadcast. And but tonight's meeting agenda is a little bit unusual because it was originally planned as the second meeting in January, a 3-hour governance workshop with Ms. Dorothy Presser from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. But we had some business to carry over from January 11th, and so we put that business after the workshop and asked Dorothy if we would condense the workshop, make it a little shorter. The workshop will run for approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then around 8:45, I'm guessing, we will take up the business that's brought over from the January 11th meeting. Let's see. So during the business portion of the meeting, we have a couple of relatively brief items to vote on. And then we'll hear an update from Superintendent Zangi regarding our current testing protocols, how they're working in light of the recent Omicron surge here, as well as a new testing option announced by Commissioner Riley from the Department of Ed on January 18th. And the committee will vote on a related proposal from the superintendent. And then also based on our January 11th discussion, the committee anticipates voting on a motion to request information from Commissioner Riley regarding their evidence base for the state's current mask and vaccine requirements. So that part of the meeting will take place starting around 8:45. So if you're live streaming, you want to come back at 8:45 for the business portion, you may want to do that, or you're welcome to stay for the governance workshop for the next couple of hours this week with Dorothy Presser. All right, so we will start the meeting with our public comment section and then go into the governance workshop. And we don't have Chrissy tonight. Okay. Jessica, why don't you just each in turn, go ahead and introduce yourselves, and you have a public comment for the school committee. And we'll just make sure that he has a second if you want. So here, I'll do that quickly.
So I'm Jessica Degdale-Brady. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I was at the Edward M. Kennedy Community Health Center. I also am a third grader at BES, and I grew up in Boylston and live here again. So, dear Superintendent, missing principals and school committee members of the Boylston Borough School Committee District. I first want to alert everyone to the fact that there was a protest by parents outside of DESE this morning. The guidelines they set forth are not sufficient to keep our students and staff safe. I'm glad the guidelines are being reviewed by the school committee at this meeting. I hope the school nurses will be present, unfortunately, so they can also give feedback immediately to the discussion. So Caitlin Genelina is an epidemiologist that works at Texas Medical School that started a newsletter for her medical students and now has a worldwide following and has been on many national news shows. She takes data and boils it down so very easily to understand and utilize. To sum up one of her most recent articles that I forwarded last week to the school committee, that rapid antigens have a delayed sensitivity to become positive, meaning a rapid antigen will not be positive until 48 hours after symptoms. The PCR will catch the infection 3 days earlier, but one has to wait for these results 24 to 48, 72 hours. If I have symptoms today, my rapid antigen will be positive for 2 more days. Omicron is contagious until 10 days. Delta was 11. The new data came out showing that the 5-day policy is not supported by evidence, and it leads to more spread within the schools. I previously said the kids on days 6 to 10 of quarantine need to eat separately from the rest of the children until their day 10 is complete in order to reduce spread. I especially want to answer the question that was posted last school committee meeting. Why did DESE extend the mask mandate? I've asked you to review the email that I sent you with this evidence and a really nice, easy to understand that I passed out this evening. Masks do work when worn over your nose. There's a limitation, however, how long and how they are worn by children and adults. The last chart I sent was from Caitlin Jenner, your local epidemiologist again, and it showed that if someone was wearing an N95 and an infected person was wearing an N95, they would get 25 hours protection in a perfect scenario. If you look at the chart, if one was wearing a surgical mask and someone was wearing a KN95, they'd have 5 hours protection. I sent my daughter into a KN95, and I hope that she can wear it the best she can throughout the day. But at best, she gets 5 hours protection when the school day is 6. And this ignores lunch and snacks and water breaks. And so this is why the entire class should be considered exposed and not the time-consuming tracing of 3 or 6 feet that CDC and DESE has laid out. Omicron is airborne. It doesn't matter. Vaccinated and unvaccinated students need to be notified if there is a person in the same room as them. I know that contact tracing has been eliminated in many districts, but a known exposure should change your behavior and who you might expose. Contact tracing is indefinitely more difficult if you consult a seating chart, and that is unnecessary and not supported by data. I again remind you of the augmented reality from the New York Times article that I showed in the spring, and also Dr. Zangi showed in the spring. The virus is in the whole room by the end of the day. I also heard that DESE consider stopping the Test and Stay program and the pool testing program. Again, sadly, we don't participate in the pool testing. And just have children test at home 2 times a week with home antigen tests. I don't think this is sufficient, even if all the parents truly did them at home. I've had 2 close friends whose children had a negative rapid antigen at home and then a positive PCR the next day who weren't notified for 2 more days. One of their parents, a coworker of mine, tested her son immediately with a rapid, negative when he developed a fever. The next day, got a PCR, and then waited 48 hours from his first symptoms, tested again with an antigen, flagged positive in a minute on that antigen test. And then 24 hours later, she got the phone call that he was indeed positive. Luckily, they all stayed home, suspecting it was such from school. I again support the Boylston Berlin Regional School District nurses in their plea for help and what they're requesting, and the modifications to testing and quarantining policy. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions, especially in regards to policies made by DESE in regards to masks. I think it would be an embarrassment to the district if we wrote that letter to them. I again ask you to review the email that I've sent, emails previously sent, to review the data so you understand where these policies come from. Thank you again for taking time to review the information before you make a decision.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay. I don't have quite the data that Jessica does, but my name is Katrina, and I have a child at BES, third grader. And my approach is a little different than data and quoting one doctor or another. I'm going based on my child and how this has affected them. And I didn't realize until today that there were hoops that we needed to jump through for this committee to ask DESE, where is the evidence to keep our kids in masks? DESE is not made up of health officials, and they're making health decisions for our children and for an entire population. Evidence should be provided well before we are allowed to mandate our kids to remain in masks. That should be first, not last. There are multiple studies from doctors who say masks aren't very effective, and we could go on and find them all. And yes, there are ones that say that we should wear KN95 masks everywhere. Well, I don't think they should. Those aren't 100% effective unless they're properly fitted. And are we just assuming that our children are walking contagious, deadly viruses? That can't be good for their mental health. And I also ask, where was everybody when flu was killing people? I don't ever recall being notified of a positive flu case. Never mind extra precautions put in place to stop the spread of the flu. The flu spreads up to 6 feet in through your nose and mouth and even on surfaces. Meanwhile, classrooms were barely sanitized. I couldn't be more frustrated that our kids are part of a "I hope this works" experiment while other states and schools are maskless and doing just fine. My preschooler hasn't worn a mask all year. Why is her class any different? Why is one state any different? I think we all know it's politics. With vaccine protection and our recent Omicron surge, a majority of our population in Massachusetts is either vaccinated with natural immunity or just has natural immunity. It seems foolish to continue with mask mandates. They didn't seem to stop the recent surge. Some vaccinated and boosted and recently contracting COVID, wearing a mask after quarantine does not make sense to me. It's only a sign of compliance, and it gives false impression that we're protecting our community. Who is held liable for speech delays, emotional and physical issues? Is the superintendent going to be? What about child suicide from all these restrictions and fears? There are harmful effects. I want evidence showing that there won't be harmful effects from covering my kid's face, or I should have the right to not send my child in a mask tomorrow. This is all being figured out at our child's expense, and the finish line keeps getting moved up. At a recent basketball game, my rule-following child, unlike myself, grabbed her chest, looked pale and red at the same time, and I thought for a minute I might have to call an ambulance. She couldn't breathe in the mask, and she was too afraid to take it off. At school, she's told to eat in silence at snack break when it's indoors because of the recent Omicron spike. What evidence do you have to tell my child when her mask is off, she needs to be silent? And if not, then she can't eat, or any other child. Let's pretend for a second they're in a restaurant or they're a celebrity or a politician. Can they remove their mask then, and it's okay? How do I explain this to her, other than tell her, well, those are the rules? Rules and mandates in history, there were a lot of rules and mandates in history that were not right, and they caused a lot of harm. And some of them, it was too late until we stopped them. The updated data has shown that a majority of the COVID hospital cases and deaths had comorbidities. I don't see mandating the way people live at home. No cigarette bans, no fast food bans, no forced exercise. And throughout all of this, the data has remained the same, that our kids have been fine. Yes, some aren't. Some kids have risk but they always have for anything in their life. We've come a long way with the virus. In the beginning, when things were unknown, it made sense to protect everybody until we knew. But now we know, and it doesn't make sense. As the data keeps changing, why aren't we allowing people to make their own choices? Are you absolutely certain we aren't creating superbugs and suppressing our children's immune systems living this way? Are you absolutely certain we aren't creating anxieties and mental health issues for our children? Because if you're mandating an entire population and parents to force their children to do something, you better be certain that it works and it's without harmful effects.
Thank you, Katrina. Appreciate that. We will take those thoughts into the business portion of the meeting later on, closer to 8:45. And I'll continue to think about the issues that you raised. We're going to take care of two items. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second? All right.
Thank you for allowing me to come.
Thank you for not saying
for the work.
I put you to work. We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
We have two parent emails in the communications folder. We just heard from them as well. And are there any other communications from the school committee? Okay. All right, then I think we're ready to move on into the governance workshop. Let's see what we can get done in the next couple of hours.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. It's nice to see everyone again and be back here. So what I want to work on tonight, what the purpose of the workshop is to talk about community engagement. So my plan is to have us first talk about what is community engagement, and get sort of your ideas, and spend a little bit of time talking about how you view community engagement and trying to get a definition we can sort of all agree on, or some good points that we can all agree on it contains. And then I have a few, I want to talk about how you see the committee's role versus the administration's role in community engagement. I have a couple scenarios for you to kind of tease apart. And then talk a little bit about the open meeting law and how that interacts with your work and your community engagement. Make sense? So, and my goal is to wrap up by between 8:30 and 8:45, because I know it's going to be a long night for you. So, unlike my Post-its, you can keep these when you're done. What I want you to think about, I want you to take about 5 minutes and just jot down how you define community engagement, or some of the key concepts that you think are really important in community engagement. Then we'll have a discussion and put some of those thoughts and definitions up on the chart paper and see where we can get some commonality in people's thinking. I'm actually going to set a timer so we don't go longer than the 5 minutes. I've got a minute left and I see some people still writing, so excuse me. There we go. Anybody want to volunteer to start us off?
I'll go first.
Okay, great.
I'll just give the first couple ones I have.
Yeah.
I wrote that it's a two-way communication between the community and for us, the school committee. And then to have a proactive approach with the goal of making student achievement a priority. That could fall right under that, the two-way communication. I don't know. I want to use all. Okay.
So two-way, a proactive approach with student achievement as a priority.
We might want to bring those charts up a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else needs that.
That's easy to
Maybe
do.
it's just me.
That better?
Yeah, that's great,
Can
thank
you
you.
guys see it too?
Yes.
Very good.
You know, I wrote transparency.
Say it again.
Transparency. As I think, you know, it's, I think as we've thought about it and talked about the things we're trying to do, I think a lot of it's about communication and information sharing. And particularly a lot of, I think, on the engagement side, and kind of Julie, your second point there, using student achievement as a priority and how can we kind of leverage the community to enhance the student experience.
So can you talk a little bit more about what, and first of all, I think I missed a word after.
Transparency and I think access to us, to administration, to whoever it is they want access to.
so talk a little bit more about what you mean by transparency first, and then I'm gonna ask a little bit more about leveraging the community.
I think just transparency into decision-making and the information that's used to make those decisions, and making sure that's a transparent process that anyone in the community can see and be a part of.
So, okay, so transparency is not only seeing, understanding how a decision is made, but being able to participate in the decision-making.
Or at least like the example tonight, participate in the way where you have an opportunity to have your voice heard.
Okay, so, and then leveraging. the
Just kind of
community.
leveraging the kind of diversity of the community and the resources in the community to help enhance the student experience. We talked a little bit, I know, at least in the recent meeting around internships and job shadowing, those kinds of opportunities where members of the community could help enhance the educational experience.
Okay,
I pretty much echoed Julie, where I said, community members kind of coming to the meetings, and then school committee members going out into the community and being part of different community groups so that we could, share information. But it definitely is a two-way and proactive. I think those are really good words.
let me see, school committee in community.
Yeah, and I know it's hard for people, but I wish more parents would come to the meetings. It was great to have. I mean, because it's like sometimes I have no idea what people are thinking besides the people in my circle. So,
So part of that is understanding that the people that you know may not be representative of everyone.
of course, yeah.
Two-way and proactive.
Yeah, definitely. It has to be two-way.
Okay,
Yes, I have, you need to make sure that you be inclusive and promote equity while showing your integrity. I wrote, saying what you mean and doing what you say with no hypocrisy as an individual worker.
there's a lot of thoughts.
There is a
going
lot,
on.
I like to write.
Okay, so I heard equity, right?
Be inclusive and promoting equity. I also said integrity.
No, equity. Integrity. Okay, keep going.
Saying what you mean and doing what you say.
Was that what you meant by integrity, or is that something different?
No, that's inclusive.
Okay,
What I technically wrote was show integrity by saying what you mean and
Okay,
doing
got it.
what you say.
okay.
And I close that with without hypocrisy.
Without, what was that?
Hypocrisy.
Without
Oh,
hypocrisy.
oh, oh. I hope it's spelled right.
Looks good.
So when you talk about being inclusive, is just some of the things that I've said before encapsulate that, or are you thinking differently than that? Also,
Two-way communication would be inclusive. Transparency is certainly part of being inclusive. Communication access, certainly.
so, okay. Okay. Gloria.
I think I would say being visible, and by visible I mean seen, because I know a lot of us go to different things, but I'm not sure people know who we are. And I don't know if that's something that's a name tag situation,
School committee member has.
or if it's like a social media thing where your picture is there and they can associate a face with a name, because sometimes I feel like people don't reach out because they don't realize, oh, that's who Julie Lee is. Oh, I know her, I've talked to her and told her what I thought. But I don't think, so I think visibility, people knowing who we are and that they can get to us.
Okay. Anything else to add to that?
No, I think
This table.
the advantage of wearing glasses, everybody said what's on your list.
Never follow suit, she's got 4 pages of notes. I should have looked before.
No, everything's been said. People have opportunity to speak with school committee members or the committee as a whole. And the committee seeks out the breadth of perspectives in the community, not just those in our inner circles, as Megan was saying, but uses tools like surveys and forums and coffee talks, a variety of tools and places to try to hear from a breadth of the community. People feel informed of and committed to improving student learning in the district. That's the focus. And people in the community report that they feel heard by the committee.
Now you all know why I will never be a classroom teacher.
That's good. You can read all your writing too.
So,
Yeah, wait a minute, check with Joe.
yes,
Sorry.
no, not yet. So
Oh,
to
okay.
ask you a little bit more.
You're not getting off those pages.
Yeah. Exactly. Can you talk a little bit more about, when you say informed of and committed to? So talk a little bit more about how you see that as part of community engagement, or what exactly you mean by that.
Well, I mean, I think one of the goals is to engage people in thinking about what's best for students. And people may have different perspectives on that, but that people bring those perspectives into conversation with a united commitment to support students in their learning.
Okay.
Is there more?
Yeah, it is, it fleshes it out a little bit more.
I just had just kind of one general umbrella topic, which is just for thought, which is the responsiveness to community needs. And then, so I had some other kind of subtopics. That those are cyclical. I found that, it's just like my experience that, so for example, like these committees, other committees in the town, typically they don't really you don't really interact with them until it's that time of the year. So, so the times of the year where, FinCom will want to talk to you, times of the year when select board, there's times of the year when the planning board will want to talk to you, and then you don't see them. And then, obviously you have to have a good relationship with, because you go to them for something. So the planning board, for example, might want to talk to you if they're putting up units, housing units, because it affects enrollment, and they want to know that stuff. But then you need to go to the building inspector when you need to know how many units are being built, so you can do your report too. But those are things are cyclical, so you probably don't, it's not like you can do that stuff all the time. And then I also think, and this has been addressed here, is that you have to find time to listen to people's concerns. I mean, one of the things, Megan was saying, I don't know what people think, and that's typically, I think, because when everything's going well, people pay their taxes and they hire you to do the job, and that's how they feel about it. My kid's getting educated, and there's no problem. And there's no problem. I got a job, I come home, I do what I have to do, and I'm busy too. And I think there really is a feel that, this is what we pay you to do. And I always agree with that. So, you hear things when things aren't right. So, again, you got to find time to listen to those people who have issues. And that's how I think that's how you get a gauge of what you're doing. If everything's quiet, in my experience has been, everything's going okay. It depends on the community too, I guess, too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I could give you
So
examples.
can I'm gonna, you know. So if things are quiet, do you feel like there's less need at that moment for community engagement?
No, I mean, I think it depends on the community, and I think it depends on who the community is. I worked in a community with a high Puerto Rican population, and I wondered why nobody said anything. And I have a friend who worked at town hall who was Puerto Rican, and said, you know, it doesn't seem like everything's going well here, but I don't hear anything. And she said, well, it's cultural, you know, that in Puerto Rico, they're not gonna question. They see you as an authority person, they're not gonna question. That's different in affluent communities. They don't necessarily see you that way, and they'll step right up to you. So, I think you have to read the community, you know. I mean, I think in a lot of communities where, people may be a little more affluent, they're probably less engaged. If everything's going well, they're satisfied. And so I think, you know, you do see other things with the communities in town. I think there's always room to reach out. I mean, I'm still working off things parents told me the first 100 days I was here. When I was out, meeting folks and getting to know the community. I mean, I still have a whole list of things that parents said to me that I'm still thinking about. This expansion of the internship shadowing program came from a conversation I had 4 years ago. Expanding AP courses came from a conversation, and the guy called me up out of Clear Blue and said, you know, you're a new superintendent. Just want to talk to you about a few things in this community. Here's what I think.
That's an interesting question that you raised about when things are quiet. Does it mean we have to think about community engagement less?
How would you guys answer that question?
I feel like it's the same people that voices are heard. There's like, this is gonna sound weird. There's like a group of people, and I think it's the majority of people that just kind of do their job, do their thing, they're busy, and they kind of go along to get along. And we don't really know those people's opinion because it's like the same group of people. And I don't want to use the word complain. I feel like that participates or engages. I don't know if you guys feel that way.
No, I kind of see what you're saying. I agree with you. I think if it's quiet, that's the challenge. Nobody's coming to you. You still need to figure out what's going on, what's in their minds, what's in their thought. It's quiet. A lot of people don't agree with one thing or another, but they got to go to work. They got to get their kids home. They got to do homework. They got to do this thing, that thing. They got whatever activities. They don't have the time, and so they're just like, well, whatever. Someone else is handling that.
Yes.
So
And that whole group, you know.
well, that's the challenge when it's quiet, right? You have to go out there and get it.
Yeah.
That's what community engagement is. You figure what the hell's going on.
Right, so, and it may be, well, I'm a little bothered by it, but not enough, right? It doesn't rise to the level of coming to a school meeting.
But that assumes that when it's quiet, there's no input coming in, and that's not true. You get 1,000 kids engaging teachers every day. There's input coming into the schools all of the time, every day with everybody. So, and the superintendents in the schools, the principals in the schools. So it's not like that's what you get paid for. You make observations, you ask questions.
Yeah, I think it's a difference in administration has one set of challenges and one set of activities, whatever. From a school committee perspective, we're not in that building every day. That's a different challenge.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not true.
Yeah. I think, community is the school, right? So
Yeah,
who's
no,
around
I
the
get
school,
that.
who's at the building, who's at the games after school, who's going to the plays, who do you talk to them all? No, but
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like,
And I guess that brings up a good point, Dorothy, I think that school administrators and school teachers see engagement very differently than school, because they don't see, the only thing they get is from me or, Facebook Live. So, that's quite, there's a lot of room in the middle of that.
You said Facebook moms.
Yeah.
Don't forget
There's
that.
like a ton of dads that are very active on Facebook.
Moms and
What
dads.
about equity here?
Yeah,
Moms and dads.
moms.
I think we got a guilty party here, but that's okay.
My Facebook is clean, clean as a whistle.
I stand corrected. Moms and dads.
I think, well, what Jeff's saying though is that teachers and principals, they get feedback from kids and parents, right?
Yeah.
Committee needs to engage with parents, but, who we hear from the voters of the town, right? So it's slightly different audience or subset of the same audience, maybe?
Or more of one audience than the other in your ear, right? You've got students, you've got staff, you've got parents, community members, more so. Not that you don't have students and staff, not that you don't have parents and community members, but the balance of who you hear from more is different for the administration and it is for them.
But I feel like as school committee members, we're only hearing from our people. So like, we're all kind of from different groups, like our kids are different ages, so that's our circle.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never have somebody like from Tohoto, they have no clue who I am, to Laurie's point, they'd be like, I don't know, like, they look at me, and people from Boylston might not know who Julie is. They're like, oh, I don't know who this woman is, or Mike.
One
From last year,
They don't like this.
everyone knows Mike from last year. No, like in all seriousness, I think that's a huge challenge, is like I'm literally only hearing from my people, which may be similar to me, so I'm not getting the full spectrum. So that's like a huge challenge, I think, for me. How can I or we be better at hearing what everybody, I mean, I think Susan said surveys, that's a good.
Yeah, so making sure that you're hearing from the quiet people too, or giving them.
The quiet people, the people that like Mike might hang out with, or, Julie, like those people,
I don't know.
Mike's probably not hanging out with quiet people.
I don't want to couch.
And I think too, like, there's that line, right, you're a parent too, right?
well, yes, that's a very tough, especially for me, I'm kind of difficult for me to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, this is your parent opinion, and now you have to put your school committee hat on and think like a school committee member, because your natural instinct is, obviously, I'm sure all of us can agree, to love on your babies and want whatever's best for their specific situation, so.
So I want to ask you a couple other questions, just to continue this conversation. And then, I'll go get my other board up here. And then, once we've talked about the different aspects, we'll see if we can come up with something that is a sentence or two that incorporates a lot of these thoughts, and is actually a definition of how you see community engagement and how you would like to, might be a little bit of a stretch for tonight, but how you would like to think about it. If you know how, like, if you've defined it, then implementing it or seeking it becomes a little bit easier to follow the time, right? Any question list? So the first, we asked about the role of community engagement. How do you see the role of the committee? Not the role of individual members, that's the next question. How do you see the role of the committee in community engagement? I'm not gonna have you write it down, you have a notepad if you want to write down some thoughts, but just sort of want to do a little bit of a round robin. Julie, do you want to start?
Sure, maybe. I would say, I think we're sort of doing that, we started that, so that each member on the committee is going to go to the various groups in the schools or the community, and meet with them periodically throughout the year to engage with those groups, the PTOs, BS Foundation.
Yeah.
CPAC, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's, yeah, sure.
Liaisons.
Exactly, yep.
I keep thinking, but, man.
I was literally gonna say exactly what Julie was, sorry.
What does that say?
Liaison to the schools to engage.
In the different community groups.
Groups.
It's like community.
Should I write that
It's
down?
not really whole community groups, it's really like school groups. Yeah, it's
And
not,
also, Lori and I also go to this.
The selectmen.
Yeah.
but like, we don't do parks and rec or like the
Yeah.
sports or stuff like that, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, there's too few of us.
Mostly schools.
Yeah, it's school groups.
Okay. So you have the same thing. Do you have anything to add?
I guess I would say, go back to Adam's concept of transparency, because it's hard, you can't really engage the community unless they can understand what you're doing. And so I guess that is something that we're always working on, is how to explain what we're doing instead of just doing it. We come prepared. We've read a bunch of materials. We've already been thinking about topics when we sit down at the table, but then how to really make our thinking, put our thinking out for the community when we sit down here in this room, so each of us can understand each other's thinking, but also so the community can hear our thought processes as we talk together. Which is kind of ties back to later the topic of the open meeting law too, about, where do we make that transparent? And I think this is the space where we should be doing that.
I like the first one. I would maybe be a little more specific. I always like to think of them as liaisons between the schools and the community.
Say that, liaison between the school and the community.
In the community.
That's like defining the word,
Like, between the school district and the community. So I think that a lot of times, school
Oh,
committees.
okay, I misunderstood. So that the school committee is a liaison between the schools and the community, not that the individual people that are liaisons are.
Yeah, committee.
If that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
That the school committee is a liaison between the schools and the community.
Correct.
Between the schools and the committee. So,
No, between the
And
schools and the
community.
community.
yeah, so you see the school committee is going to the schools,
Oh,
bringing
no.
information.
You've been trying to get in the school system. Every chance you get, she throws it in there.
So if you think about when we talk about roles and responsibilities, that this fits right in, right? That we talk about the committee being representing the vision and value of the community, but you're also making sure, at the committee table, you are making sure that the community is well informed about the schools,
I see.
right? That's kind of.
Yeah, and plus, they live in the communities. They go to places and they get stopped by, community members who may have an idea about something that's not true or is true, so they can either confirm it or say, well, that's not how we interpret what's going on.
So that's a little bit more how a committee member is engaging with the community as
No,
opposed.
not if they have a unified voice, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's another issue, but if they have a unified voice and they're acting as one, I don't see that.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that.
I'm not saying you can't be an individual, be a school committee member, but on certain things, to me, it's no different than leadership meetings. We go to leadership meetings and they may disagree with me and I may disagree with them. But when we leave, we all toe the line. And that's the rules. And I don't always get my way in my meetings. But when we go into the schools, if we're saying something different, then if one principal is telling their staff something different than another principal, it becomes a problem. So, I think if a school committee speaks with a unified voice, like say they take a vote, somebody might not go along with that vote.
Yeah.
Well, that's, they can't then go in the community and say, well, 5 of them did, but I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And that happens.
So I'm gonna tease this out a little bit granularly. 100% agree with that, but I guess what I'm thinking about is not when the committee has made a decision and acted, but gathering information that may inform decisions, or getting ideas from community members. They may be acting more as individuals than as a committee, or bringing that to the table. So my example is, 2 principals might come to a leadership meeting, and one of them says, my teachers are thinking this way, and another principal is saying, well, my teachers in my building are thinking this way. And you get to a decision, they're gonna bring the decision forward, but they came to it with different viewpoints based on input they received. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, but, again, it might be a function of who we as a team is or where the committee is. I think if you set up those sort of protocols before that, and things are put in place so that when they get there and they're collecting information, there isn't that wide of a discrepancy between what they say when they come to the table. There are things to hatch out, but
Yeah.
like it's not going to be one comes with A and the other comes with B. Maybe one comes with A and one comes with C. It's a little bit closer, but you have to do work before that. We need to work on the leadership team to make sure that that's not the case. That we've already set those parameters. But maybe that's the issue, or the development of a committee, that they haven't had time to formulate that, to get those things in place. Am I making sense with that?
I think in the big picture, yes, because you're thinking about processes develop over time, more information comes in, and then that's how you get to a decision that everybody commits by, right? But at the beginning of the process, there may be apart, right? And then you get closer together as more information comes in, and you have the discussions, and people have the input and the consensus.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a leap on, you guys can fill me in if I'm wrong, but you decided to regionalize, right? And you've had a lot of opinions out there about whether or not you should regionalize. But there's a lot of, and I know some of you were or weren't involved in that whole process, because it was a different committee. Yeah. But at the beginning, opinions might have been all over the place. And then it was a big decision, and over time, you got more information out, and then you got to the point where the community and the committee made a decision that was moved forward.
Yeah, that's an interesting example, because during that time, also the members of the committee, the subcommittee that were charged with that, held a lot of community forums and had a lot of listening going on at the same time. As they were sharing information out, they were also collecting a lot of perspective back in.
Yeah.
And they did that quite a bit.
You were here for the whole process.
Excuse me?
You were here for the whole process. So
Yeah.
Not all of it, a lot of it.
But Tohoto was always a regional high school, right?
Correct.
So it was just that the district was not regionalized until how many years ago?
In 2018.
No, yeah, 18.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before that, it was 3 districts.
Oh, Tohoto had to be its own district.
Yeah.
It was a union, superintendent's union. So, It's probably a lot more common. I think this one was formed in like 1960. 61.
Anyway, okay, so we got stuck on one thing, so let's keep things moving. Do you have anything more to add about the committee's role?
Yeah, I was thinking, attending, like school events, I'm thinking specifically of Jeff's parent boot camp that he does with the incoming sixth graders. I know the company that I work for, we were here. We had a table, you could come over to us, talking to us, in the savings bank, but that would be a great opportunity to have a table and have the school committee members there so people, can introduce yourself. And same thing with like preschool and when kindergarten starts, things like that as a committee, just so that people could know who we are.
It's a really good
I
idea.
don't think we are doing quite a bit of parents yet. I thought we did. Did we have it? Like you were there with the company.
I was there with my company,
Yeah,
yes, I don't know.
no, I've been to the last so many.
Yeah.
Julie's there, so.
I've been frequently, the school committee doesn't go.
When is it? September?
Ask what we do that. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's a good idea.
That is a really good idea, Lori. There's like tons of, there's all different like open house things that the school committee should, I mean, we did a PTO event, the Pumpkin Fest, there was like all different, I mean, not to be there the whole time, but just so some of the parents can,
I end up in a hat.
we got to have t-shirts.
So, can I ask Lori, or anybody else, is it just school events, or what about the broader community?
Well, it's funny, because I had Memorial Day on there, we had a big Memorial Day parade, and then I was thinking, I don't know about you, but I love that parade, and I don't want to really be at the table, like, I want to be out talking to people, so I was thinking, like, if we did, like you said, like, maybe an hour or whatever.
We'd have to take turns, like one of us would man the table and.
Because that was another, I have that on here as well, because the community members who didn't know us, because their kids have either graduated, or they don't have kids in the school system yet, it's important that they know who we are, so that they can reach out with questions as well.
So I'm gonna ask you to take it one step further. Why is it important to you that they know who you are?
Well, because we've had people go to selectmen for our school committee issues, which I think is wonderful. I mean, whoever's gonna advocate for them, they should go to, but, when there's a problem with the road, I don't go to the selectmen, I go to the DPW. You know, like, I don't know that if there's something going on in school where there's a problem, a plus, like, hey, I wanna bring in this program, they should know who we are, and we should be a friendly face. Because otherwise, they're all reaching out to Jeff, and his inbox is probably pretty full, I'm guessing. But it would be like just a nice liaison, a connection, I guess, is really what I'm looking for, because I feel like people may know our names, but they don't know who we are. I remember just recently, someone saying, oh, that's so-and-so. Oh my, I sit next to her, I see her all the time, that's so-and-so? So it's the same with us, they may interact with us all the time and not realize, oh, that's someone on the school committee. I could be telling them about this, or asking them, when the next meeting is, or something along those lines.
That's the liaison. that I was talking about. Back to the point we were trying to make with it. So if that's what they're all doing, if they're all saying that, then okay, we're gonna take that and then we're gonna send that stuff to Jeff to answer. As opposed to, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna deal with it. That's different. That's not everybody acting the same way. Okay, so if they all said, okay, when we get something like that, we'll be out there, we'll all do that. And when you meet along with them, send that to the superintendent. That's all acting in the same direction.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing I was talking about. They're all,
Try it.
going both the same way.
Yeah.
And that's it, acting like an individual.
Yeah, and so that's a little bit what I was trying to.
But with a unified direction.
Yeah, so, we'll get to that, more of that.
If we get it to it now, we can save some time.
But you're right, Mike, do you have anything more to add?
Yes. I have two thoughts. I had my thought, and then after what Lori and Jeff just said, I had another thought. And regarding what you guys just said, I think Jeff's getting on the point where individuals are going out and talking to people and trying to solve a problem individually. That's a bad thing. Going out and getting the problem, bringing it back and dumping it on Jeff's desk, this is your problem, you deal with it. That's also a bad thing. So I think there's some middle ground somewhere where if you tell the person out there you meet them individually, yeah, I can't do anything for you right now, but we'll take it to the committee and we'll, discuss it or whatever the appropriate response is, depending on what the issue is. That's a good thing, but I wonder if you run the risk of do that enough times and not give people a solid answer, that you might start to get the community saying, well, is my feedback even welcome? Am I gonna be heard? Am I gonna be taken seriously, or are they just gonna pass it on to Jeff? And then you go, wait 3 weeks for the next meeting, and then maybe it got on the agenda, maybe it didn't. It's busy that night, we'll push it to the next one. Now it's 2-3 months gone by, and they're just like, I just wanna know why there was green beans at lunch instead of turkey or something. Like, so we run into that problem. Well, what I was gonna say.
But, and this gets to what I'm constantly saying to the committees is, we spend a lot of times talking to committees about what your role is, right? It's that governance role. The people that don't understand that role are the whole rest of the community. So when someone has a problem about green beans, the answer isn't, I'll bring it to Jeff. It's, why don't you go, the person to talk to is the food service director.
Yeah, I think we even
And I
have a
think-
policy on that,
Yeah.
that we just maybe went over
So,
the other day, right? Yeah,
So
so
it's-
we have a policy on that, so I think you're right.
but if they
That's that
say,
fine line.
Yeah.
You gotta balance, what category does this fall into versus that one, what do I do? So that's a challenge. What I was gonna say originally, I think, I don't even know what I was gonna say now.
if it pops back in.
It was, someone mentioned something about, I think in the liaison, the school committee is between the community and the schools.
Yep.
I think some people sometimes struggle, like, obviously, they don't come to the meeting, we do record it, so they can watch it afterwards if they want. But that is gonna take 4, 5, 6 hours to get through. There's the minutes that they can go through, but there, you read the minutes, it doesn't really tell you what actually happened or what was discussed or what the different sides were before the vote was taken or anything like that. So it's tough for the community, unless they attend the meeting, it's tough for them to actually know what's going on. So what can we do to sort of educate them as to what's happening?
I was gonna say, I was thinking along the same lines a little earlier when I thought about, the fact that we've relied heavily on, if we want information to be shared, it's going to go to Jeff's Friday email, right, from him, even if it's the school committee, the way that I know, that's been the vehicle we've used to get communication out there to parents in particular. There are other committees that do or communicate out to the community differently than that. Do they use their own channel, their own communication to share information, not relying on the superintendent's, let's say, weekly newsletter?
Yeah, it gets difficult because you have to sort of decide what the communication's gonna be together. It slows it down. A lot of times our take on it is really not, like a lot of the committees will say, we think we should have a committee Facebook page. There's really, but who's gonna run it? Who's gonna decide the content? You have to do that by committee, right? So really, there's nothing that you can do that's much more than the district can do anyway. So that's a lot of times why the administration becomes sort of the main channel of outgoing communication.
What I find that reading the newspaper articles about our meetings tend to be the best source of information should you be a member of the community, you want to know what's going on within the school committee, those articles, we don't have control over, beyond the fact that we're reporting on what we're saying here. Those tend to be, in my opinion, some of the best sources for a community member who's just interested in seeing kind of what's going on.
Yeah, and if you have a reporter that's covering them well, then you're lucky.
I just wanted to expand a little bit on what I had said. I spoke specifically about a problem, but I can think of several times when a parent has reached out to me and I said, okay, that's an issue that you want to take to Diane or to ACE or a certain principal, or, oh, you know what, that's a great thing. Oh, you want to talk about that curriculum? We have a whole curriculum, when we go out approving a curriculum, you're gonna wanna go and talk to Carol. So that's what I mean about knowing where to send the people rather than just Jeff who's, trying to do with his day. But the other thing is just having some sort of familiar, face where they feel like if they have a good idea or if they say, hey, this is going great, and something that we can pass along too. It's good to hear the good and the bad. And so that's what I mean about being just present. And that's why I said in the other, visible, being seen.
I know, remember the training we did fairly recently? There were school committee members that go live on the Facebook. I'm not a fan of Facebook, however, I think that it's a great tool to communicate with the committee as long as we have that unified.
I agree.
Wait one second.
Sorry.
But, and there was an example, there was a woman that after the meeting, she just popped on live. It was maybe 5 minutes long, and people can, I mean, reading the minutes, I agree with you, Mike, that you don't get the sense of anything really that's happened there. And then to have to go through and watch the 5-hour recording is difficult. But if you could just, put that thing up while you're doing work and hear the person, I think that's a great way to have engagement committee. And I know it comes down to who manages it, but you can figure that out. If there's gonna be a benefit, I think we could.
The only thing going live at 11 o'clock at night.
No, you can go right after the meeting, sure. The next day.
It would have to be something that we all felt comfortable, that whoever is doing that isn't putting enough of their own slant
You
on
can
it.
all do it too, not do homework, you can all do it together.
But I think that would also
Then you have to
bring
post
cohesiveness
it,
to
then you have to
the.
post it. And
Yeah.
Your page has to be tied to one person, because I have to do that for baseball. So one person would have the password to be there for Facebook. I mean, you could do other social media platforms that I'm sure we
So
know.
I'm gonna stop this conversation, not because it's not a good conversation, but we have limited time.
Yep.
And what we're getting to is a lot of ideas of implementing community engagement. I want to get us back to the definition of
That
first.
is on the agenda, right, related to social media?
Yeah, talking a little bit about social media.
Yeah, all right. Cool.
So we talked about the role of the committee. In that conversation, I feel like we did sort of talk about the individual committee members. Anybody have any more thoughts about what's the role of an individual committee member in community engagement? I just sort of recap what I heard, right? It's being visible as an individual community member, looking from who you are. Being accessible and understanding where information goes or where questions go or where concerns go in a sort of a common understanding of how that works and a common understanding with the administration of how that works. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So, do you think we are to the point when we can start to talk about how would you define it? I see some of the, two-way, proactive, inclusive student achievement, visible. Who's good at editing? Mike, you said you like to write.
So Mike.
I like to write a terrible at editing. I get corrected so many times before I get a final draft. It's terrible.
Or do you want a sentence or a couple
Yeah.
sentences?
Yeah, it can be a couple sentences, it doesn't have to be one.
The definition of community engagement.
Yes. How does the Boylston School Committee define community engagement?
Two-way proactive approach that's where I was saying.
Community engagement is
trying,
Great.
and you can step in and give this.
What have you got so far? I can't see.
I'm sorry. Community engagement is a two-way proactive approach that is focused on student achievement, responsive to community needs.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't put anything in here about the budget, which is like the biggest thing that we have oversight for. And the community are the taxpayers, so we haven't considered them at all.
I think one thing that we could say as a third bullet is it informs the school committee's decision-making, because that includes budget, that includes other things too, policies and other areas.
I would think community needs and concerns, needs and wellness.
Can't very different.
Well, she has, community needs, community needs and concerns, or interests, perhaps to give a positive connotation.
I would say maybe attentive to diversity of the community. I mean, attentive or solicits, I guess attentive to diverse perspectives or something. I'm trying to get at the breadth of perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess I would say attentive to,
Some of the words you have.
I think it's an approach that is built on integrity. Because without integrity, we're lost. No one will believe a thing we say without integrity. And equity, I love equity. Built on integrity. I like Susan's inclusive of all stakeholders. I like the word stakeholders. That covers anybody you need.
I'm tempted to put that is, I've been tempted to put integrity over here. I agree.
Can I, throw something out in terms of the beginning of this?
Yeah.
And maybe say that we could have a sentence that then has some bullets after it that we agree to, because of what I've written. Community engagement is a two-way approach to communication between the community and the communities we represent. That is.
I love it.
read it one more time, Alice.
So community engagement is a two-way approach to communication between the committee and the communities we represent. That is focused on student needs, responsive to community needs, that is conforming on those things we have below.
That's good.
Yeah.
You have it written down, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
So community engagement is a two-way approach to communication between the committee and the communities we represent. That is, colon or semicolon, which one's the one with two dots? Colon.
That's a colon.
It's a colon.
Colon, yeah.
Do you want proactive to be in there? Or do you feel like you said it?
I would put it as both. As proactive.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more, and I don't want to get off of this right now, I think we should keep going, but I'd like to hear more about what Julie meant by that when she first put it on the table.
I would say being more proactive versus reactive, right? Something happens, then we respond, kind of like what Mike said, then it takes forever to get there, to have the solution, you know what I mean, to the problem. So if we can kind of be thinking or listening to members, right? And proactively getting at the concerns of the community.
Before their concerns?
Before the concerns become, you know.
Sure, and I think,
Fires,
as
yeah.
some of community engagement is a balance of understanding community needs and being responsive to them, but gathering that input. Like, when Jeff comes to you with goals, he's gotten a lot of input about what those goals need to be based on data, right? Based on data and feedback. And you're proactively sort of addressing, you might see needs before they become huge problems, right? So when we talk about establishing goals, it's because you want to be proactive instead of reactive in the work that you're doing. You're looking at what's needed, you're establishing the goals to address issues, and you're setting, instead of letting community members constantly come to you and say, this is an issue, fix it, fix it, fix it. You're the leaders saying, this is where we sense based on feedback from the schools, based on feedback from the community, putting it together, these are the goals, this is the direction we're headed, in a proactive way, rather than a reactive way.
Yeah, I think sometimes the issue there is the proactive can sometimes look like a knee-jerk response. Like you hear from some small portion of people, and so you set something in motion in the interest of being proactive, but you've actually not heard from the diverse constituents in your community before you take that move. So sometimes I think proactive.
See, I would say that if you're responding to a small number of constituents, if that's more reactive than proactive. That's what I would call a knee-jerk response.
Yeah, I would say proactive, definitely not knee-jerk, but also it gets to what we were discussing earlier about the silence, right? Like no news is good news. Well, we're being proactive. It doesn't matter if there's silence or if there's a lot of activity going on. We're being proactive. We're out there trying to do something, whatever that something is, we'll define it. But instead of waiting for it to come and then requiring a knee-jerk reaction.
You can be proactive by also remaining informed on what's going on in other districts, both in the state and around the country, to see that there are topics that are going to present themselves at some point in the future or highly likely to, and be ready to address those or have already addressed them because we proactively talked about one of these issues that we all know are going to be, front and center over the course of the next year with a big election coming up in November.
Yeah, we should have the 5 Ps in there, right? Proper preparation, prevents performance.
Well, and just to go on with Julie's proactive, I like that because I find that, Facebook becomes an outlet. It's almost like, when you think of like two people that have just, they've been stuffing it down, and then eventually something sets it off and it goes up. That's what happens on Facebook. People have questions and concerns and they may not have the right information. Like I've seen misinformation argued about. And if they simply went to someone who could say, here, I'll direct you, here's the DESI guidelines, or here, the principal would have this. If that's proactive versus them feeling like the only person they can reach out to is a computer keyboard. And then everybody else jumps on it. And then it becomes something bigger than it really needs to be. They might have gotten on there and said, oh, here's the information. So that's why I think the proactive approach is really good.
Are we convinced you?
No, I wasn't saying that proactive is reactive. Is knee-jerk. I'm saying that what I've seen sometimes is people in the interest of being proactive actually behave in a knee-jerk fashion.
Okay, they maybe act too quickly.
Yes.
And not deliberately.
Yes, they're not really being thoughtful. I think of what Adam's describing as kind of always surveying the horizon.
Yeah.
I'm kind of reading the pulse of what's coming down the line and reaching outside of your own community. I thought that was a good example, Adam, of thinking about, what's happening in other communities, what's happening in other states, how does that inform our thinking by, looking ahead.
What's happening with your students?
With what?
What's happening with your students?
Yeah.
In terms of maybe student population changes or student need changes or.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish there was more data because I'm a data-driven person. So I feel like I mean, I'm sure it exists somewhere, but it's hard, without, you know, if there wasn't like an analyst in the district or something that's analyzing all this, but yeah, like you were saying, what happens with our students? You know, I'd love to send more surveys out, to the parents, and Jeff had used, last year, he did a ton of them. I don't know if they were helpful or not,
Yeah, they are helpful. We actually have one we're working on right now. As part of my goals, actually, the equity survey, but there's some, some COVID pieces in there too. Because there's some questions about equity and COVID that's come up, so. A lot of it through the committee, the stuff that you said to us, that we, we thought about, we reach out and just get a feel for what the community thinks in terms of the equity piece. And COVID.
So to keep us moving. So we have Adam's introduction, which I couldn't write fast enough. With the bullets, right, focused on student achievement, responsive to community needs and interests, informs the committee decision-making, inclusive of all stakeholders, proactive, and somehow maybe in your introduction, we want to build in the integrity. I'm not sure that's a bullet. I mean, I really think that's part of the.
Yeah, read your opening.
Yeah. Community engagement is a two-way approach to communication between the committee and the communities we represent. That is like
Somewhere in the middle there, for built on or built with integrity or founded with integrity or something.
Yeah, I think we can find this.
Because without that,
Are you happy with what you have?
I'm very satisfied.
yeah, I think it's good.
2 thumbs. Okay,
Great.
so I'm gonna move this on,
Okay.
and take a little bit, now we're getting a little bit into more of the nitty gritty of the how, maybe, if you want to think about it that way. So, I didn't want you peeking ahead. That's why I was thinking. So in the top piece in here is actually a community engagement plan report, I guess that's what they call it, in the Boston Public Schools. But I really wanted, there's a bunch of charts in it that I thought were helpful. In thinking about community engagement and the two-way part of it. I think there's a lot of places where if you ask people about community engagement, they're going to start talking about one-way communication out to the community. But I think, in this report, on the second page, there's 4 blue squares down that talk about steps to community engagement. On the next page, where it has the history down at the bottom, there's how does dialogue inform policy discussions. And then on the next page, there's the 3 arrows that talk about informing, inspiring, and engaging. So I just want to take just a couple minutes for you to just sort of look through that and get your feedback, your impressions. Does it resonate? What do you see that might apply to anyone that you want to community engagement?
Just to clarify, this is a Boston Public Schools initiative, not a school committee.
Correct. But I think whether it's the committee or whether it's the district or whether it's the administration, when I first, a couple of years ago, when we first started really seriously thinking about community engagement, there was a lot of articles I could find. Community engagement, it's really important. You should be doing this. And I finish every article on, that's right. You missed something here. how. So, it's not always easy to find those. It's easy to find the why you should do it and the importance of it. It's a little bit harder sometimes to think of how do we actually do this. So, trying to give you a couple resources. We're not going to parse them all out tonight necessarily, but a couple of just resources to think about. We're going to really start to go about this as a committee, like, you know, the outreach that you talked about and being out in the community is a piece of it, but as a committee, thinking about what other pieces as a committee we do to make this happen. And make it that two-way in forming our decisions that we talked about. So is there anything you see in there where you can, based on the discussion we just had, that, man, this looks like just what I was thinking.
Yes.
Just what I was talking about.
So I really like the insertion of the word authentic into what I see here. I actually added it to my sentence. Community engagement is an authentic two-way approach to communication. I also like what they have here on the second page. Our goal is to engage the community in forums, stakeholder dialogues, other activities to ensure district policy changes are informed by those who are impacted by them.
I guess I'm not thinking you're going to change the definition here.
No, but I like that.
But that these are things that as you're thinking about implementing,
Yes.
these are things that you might want to keep in mind, adapt.
I love the quote that you put here, a couple of definitions of effective community engagement. The purpose of community engagement is to ensure that school improvement is done with the community, not to the community. I thought that was really just bullseye.
There is one website there, the IA piece where on their website, it says, please ask permission to reproduce our materials. So I just gave you the website so you could go look at it. And I go through the process of getting permission to reproduce all their materials. But there's some good stuff on there. They talk about thinking about your purpose for engagement. Is it communication? Is it participation? Is it, and if you're doing, if it's supposed to inform, or is it collaboration, or is it participation? And that your strategy will depend on your purpose, right? So that you have some good information. Do you have something? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this the second page, how to engage the community. I've always been a huge fan of backward curriculum design. I've used it since I was a teacher. To me, the most important part of this document is the very last bullet here, it says know what outcomes to expect. And I think that's what's missing in these kind of activities, because if you look at this little equation, and I forgot what kind of diagrams these are, so you'll probably know. But I think you have to start with, so I'm playing with it here, right? So you have, you can't see this, but it's almost like that's the middle piece. That's not where to start, that's the middle piece. So to me, it's, the whole objective of being a school committee member, it's not a job unto itself, it's to improve student learning, and that's what we're all trying to do. But they're not in schools, right? So they have a discrete set of functions, right? And the schools do. So if the outcomes, the expected outcomes are to improve student learning, and maybe they define those, and then so if you work backwards from that, that becomes the middle column. So here you get all of these outcomes which have nothing to do with anything they're connected to. Student learning, maybe something that happens in the schools that they never see on a regular basis. And then you have all the stuff in the middle is, okay, we're gonna engage the community to get to those. The part that happens right before that is, let's think of what our job is. What do? We oversee budget, like Mike said. We oversee policy. Superintendent evaluation. Now you have three parts to an equation. Here's what our outcomes are. Here's what our job authority is. And in the middle is how we're going to engage the community.
To achieve those ends.
To achieve those ends. So this is just, like, if you just look at this, there's no place I can see to go with this in terms of, if you think about this, and if you were designing a curriculum, there would be no place to go. Because you don't know what to expect, and you haven't even defined your job. Like, you haven't defined what your authority is. You don't know what your outcomes are. But now you have this thing in the middle that you're going to engage the community. What are you even going to do all of this stuff in order to get at? And what are you going to do all this to get at within the boundaries of your job? So it seems like we're defining this middle piece, but if you just look at it and you take it on itself, in and of itself, it doesn't make any sense if what you're trying to do is improve student learning. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, and it makes 99% sense. But what I hear is we know what our goals are, and now we engage the community about how we get to those goals, and I don't think.
We haven't, like, say you have three of those, so
Yep.
here's the middle piece, here's our goals, and here's our authority in the district. We oversee budget, we oversee policy, we oversee the superintendent, some other stuff. So,
But how did you decide what the goals are?
well, that's what you're gonna decide, what is the community, that's what hasn't been decided. How are you gonna do that if you don't know what the goals are? Yeah, you have to.
When you say goals, you mean outcomes.
Outcomes, yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I'm thinking of goals in terms of like your overarching district strategy, right?
Well, outcomes relative to, no.
Student learning.
Outcomes relative to, we're talking about community engagement.
Yeah.
So what are your outcomes? What outcomes are you expecting?
So.
And I don't know that, I mean, that's what I'm thinking, I think that's a good middle piece. So you got that, so if you work that backwards, I would think you have to start, if this was curriculum, say, well, what am I expecting students to know? And then you define that, and then you work backwards.
Yeah.
Right, so, you know that piece.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of it the same way, you got this middle piece, but without knowing your goals, and without knowing how you're gonna.
What you're aiming at,
Right.
what you're aiming to impact.
Isn't our goal to make decisions having been informed by the community? We have a lot of decisions to make on policy and other things. By engaging the community, are we better able to make those decisions informed by that feedback and that engagement?
Yeah, possibly, but I think you have to go and define what the goals are, or your outcomes. Once you define your outcomes, then you can then you can go back and say, within the parameters of our duties or responsibilities, how are we gonna use this stuff to get to those outcomes?
So can you give an example of an outcome? If that would maybe help?
No.
Of an outcome,
Yeah.
I think they're aiming at student learning, decisions that impact student learning.
Yeah, so yeah, we could think about, let's say,
That improve student learning.
yeah, let's see,
It can't be just broad like that.
it could be, but, maybe something around, well, we're in the middle of this COVID thing. Okay, so we're in the middle of the COVID thing. They oversee policy. So, okay, so they oversee policy, this is the middle community engagement stuff, what would be the goal?
To
I can use help.
improve policies that.
I see how Jeff is, Jeff is sort of looking at it as the high level, view, right? Like, what's the overall outcome for the year, right?
No, it might be something, I think you could use anything, like,
Yeah.
you could use backwards curriculum design to design a unit, to design a lesson, to,
But kind of marrying what you and Adam said together, like, well, you're saying, what are the outcomes we want, okay, based on budget policy and, your review, which is annual. What Adam is saying is, we need to be informed from the community on these things. That's sort of the month to month in our case, right? Between meetings, we need that engagement because focus around the agenda. And the agenda is going to be topics that come up for a vote. Do you want to be informed by the community on voting one way or another, or do we not care what they think about the items that are up for vote? So if we care what they think about the items that are up for vote, which they're up for a vote because we think that they are something that's going to help us achieve one of these outcomes throughout the year, and by the end of the year, it's going to help us either impact the school improvement plan, or impact the budget, or impact the policy that needs to be written about something as little as COVID. It's a month-to-month and constant engagement on a regular basis, continue collecting that feedback, to be informed when we make those votes, so that it's not just, like Megan said earlier, it's just not our own personal sphere. It's being informed by other people who don't think like us on an individual basis. So there's two ideas there, and I understand what Jeff's saying, because, you know, in leadership and business, you don't want to just sit there and talk around in circles, a bunch of word salad and things like that. You need to know what you're aiming at, like you said. You need to know how you're going to get there. You need to know what your authority is to get there, right? Like a middle manager has no authority to get there. A committee has authority over a few different things. A superintendent has authority over certain things. The principal has authority over certain things.
but I think it can be done, I think this could be used to develop a template that you use for everyday decisions. School can just, you know, monthly school committee decisions, or overarching high goals. So, you know, we can do the exercise. We have an issue tonight. What's the goal of the school committee tonight? Put the stuff on for them. Is there a goal? Is there an outcome, you know, relative to what I'm presenting that you would think of?
Or we're making policy decisions tonight about COVID, related to COVID.
So I guess my question would be, is the outcome a particular decision, or is the outcome an informed decision?
It could be that you develop a template, so, you know, so they're gonna take a vote tonight, right? So, you know, so they have an authority to make a vote. They've included stakeholders, we just saw two people get up here.
Yeah.
Right? And the outcome is to amend the entry plan.
Or keep it same.
Right? It could be something that simple, it's just, that's the goal tonight, to take a vote, to use that, what they believe community engagement is. They use one of them at least, right? You don't have to use every single one all the time, but if you come up with an idea of what you think community engagement is, and you're always going back to that, to make that decision, then you're following the template. So in this case, they used, you had two speakers come up. So you're using one of those bullet points to be inclusive of all stakeholders. They've been collecting data. They've been collecting data. How do I know that? They got a million emails from, and from community members, right? So they've been collecting data. So they've been doing at least one of those things. And maybe they don't have to do all four, because it's one very specific thing they have to do tonight. They have to amend, if they want, the reentry plan.
But what if the outcomes are different, sorry?
I was just
Well,
gonna
the
say,
outcome's changed, that's why it's a.
No, I mean, like, what if I'm just saying an example, I'm not saying this is my opinion. What if I'm like, no, I don't want to change that policy, and Adam's like, yes, I do. Then the outcome, my outcome that I'm expecting the committee is to follow me, and he might be expecting, what if we expect a different outcome?
Well, so that's why I said, is the outcome a decision? The outcome is you reach a decision.
It would be a decision, yeah. So, but it,
No,
no,
okay, so I
expect.
think, let me try saying what you're saying, the way I understand it, you can tell me, that you have an issue of something that needs an outcome, and you use this as a tool to get to, it's one of the tools you have to get to that outcome.
Yeah, so the outcome tonight is reach a decision on the new DESC test and state protocols. That's what the goal is tonight. That's the outcome. Whether she feels one way, he feels another, they have to come to a decision tonight. They gotta take a vote. That's where they stop. So they're gonna take a vote using these parameters in the middle to reach that outcome. That's correct, that's backwards to curriculum design.
So I'm gonna go back to regionalization, right? There was the outcome was a decision on whether or not to regionalize. And then community engagement informed that out. So,
Right, so in that's a much bigger kind of decision, so in that they're gonna probably, so maybe instead of 4 of those, there's 10 of them, and they can use 1, 2, or all of them, depending on what decision they have to make, what outcome they have to come to. In this case, maybe they only needed to get information from all the stakeholders in order to make that decision. Maybe they don't have to have a focus group, maybe they don't have to do any other stuff, maybe just that one thing's enough, but you've defined what it is.
Well, and plus the committee might then even say, we're not ready to make this decision yet because we need to consult the community more. We need to do more of these things.
Correct.
So,
I think it's less about the outcome being the decision we make, and more about how we got to making that decision in the first place.
Well, that's the middle point,
Right.
so that's what you decided on, but you gotta work it backwards and go, what do we wanna do in order to use this stuff within the authority of what
so
we.
what you're saying is community engagement doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Correct.
It is part of.
And when you approach it this way, it does, I think, when you just, without putting in the context of why are we doing this?
the purpose isn't stated.
Yeah, correct, yeah, well, not explicitly,
Yeah.
it's not stated within the context of what their job is.
Right.
So I would say that bullet focused on student achievement shouldn't be a bullet. It should be part of the state.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, if we're gonna look at it, what's that, you mean that first one there?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, that's
This is a
common.
bullet.
Just put it right on the other chart, Dorothy.
Yeah,
So we can start to see it.
so if you were gonna look at your overarching goals, like Mike was talking about for a year, regarding community engagement, that would be one of the big outcomes you would think of. There is an outcome, we could use all of the community engagement beliefs, right? Because that's what you're developing, that belief. And we're gonna use policy and with other tools we have at hand as community members to get there. But now you have a defined set that everybody uses to get to that.
Yeah, that
To me,
first,
that makes sense. I don't know. maybe
that
that's-
first chart can be pulled right out of the MASC charting course materials about the school committee's role. The
Yeah,
school committee's role is to blah, 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 use policy, budget, blah, blah, blah. They use community engagement as a key strategy to advance their key authorities toward achieving student.
so you're always gonna have
That
two,
goes in budget, right? That goes in budget.
you're always gonna have two constants, you know, that your authority is that's a constant.
Yeah.
And then this is a constant, that's the way you define that, right? So you come up with all of these strategies. And then the variable is the problem,
Right.
you know, the outcome. And so all the time you can say, okay, we want to have this outcome. And then all you have to do is work backwards. Well, not all you have to do, it seems like. Now you have two defined, now you have a direction. You say, okay, well, you know, if it's community engagement, we use these, we all use these things, one or all of them. And then we have to think about those in terms of all of the things we can and can't do.
I'm not sure that those things are the things we're going to use. I think we're going to probably come up with some of the things we'll use, be it a forum or stakeholder dialogues. I look at the bullets there, and they're kind of both most jumped up to me at this point as the goal. And the goal is to inform our decision making, and to do so by engaging the community.
That's
Say that
how,
again?
My goal is for community engagement
Yeah.
to inform our decision making.
yeah.
And I don't think Jeff's saying anything different than that.
Yeah, and I'm saying is I think about what I would pull out as like the specific to the goal. Working back, the goal to me would be to have our decision making be informed by the community we represent.
Well, yeah, of course, that's why you did it. I mean, that's why you're doing that. Yeah, no, I'm not saying anything different.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like Dorothy was just saying, that can't exist in a vacuum. You have to understand what your outcomes are and then work backwards to what your authority is as a school committee member.
Yeah,
So you could almost start the statement with, within our authority as a school committee. And then dive into it.
Yeah.
You have something already done, Susan?
No, I've got pieces written all over the place right now. I was just thinking, within our authority as school committee members, our goal is,
No, I would say within our authority as a school committee.
as a school committee,
Yeah.
our goal is for community engagement strategy. Our goal is to use community engagement strategies to inform our decision.
I would simplify it maybe saying our goal is to engage the community in our decision making.
Say that again?
We want to
In our
engage the
decision making?
community in
Yeah,
our
and then you could
decision
say
making
using
using these.
and fit focused on student achievement.
It just sounds a little different to me, engage them in our decision making.
And what did you
It
say?
sounds like a collaborative.
Engage them to inform our decision
we
making.
need like a whiteboard so that we can write it and we can erase it. It's, oh, is this a whiteboard?
We need a whiteboard.
Oh, the dry erase.
Big writing, big
First grade writing, Dorothy.
Okay. So where am I starting?
Good walk.
Within our authority as a school committee.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what we started?
Yeah, something like that, I think so.
What I was thinking is, within our authority as a school committee, we will engage the community in an effort to inform our decision making. I would, that's right. That's right. So as to inform our decision.
I'm gonna change it a little and you can mix it.
That's actually a pretty good overarching statement.
Yeah, that is a good overarching.
And to engage our community in decision-making, focused on students.
Wait, we're, sorry.
Well, I like the community informing our decision making as
Yeah,
opposed
right.
to being in decision making.
Yeah.
Or to inform our decision making.
I found it.
Yeah. Okay.
They can't come in here and go.
Yeah, that's been around for a long time.
Wipes, tissues. Tissue. Well, kids everywhere.
She's a mom, there's gonna be tissues or wipes.
I have wipes, I have potty in my car.
Not a Facebook.
Swear to God,
Not a Facebook.
definitely not. I usually have
I
snacks.
was not gonna look that one. Facebook person,
Yeah,
person of Facebook.
that sounds like a movie.
Okay, so this is what we have so far. Within our authority as a school committee, we will engage our community to inform decision-making that is focused on student achievement.
I like it.
Does the school committee have any authority spelled out for engaging the community? Did I miss that one out? Or-
Yes, you have, there's budget, policy, hire and evaluate.
No, yeah, no, I'm familiar with our authority in those, but within our authority to engage the community, do we have authority spelled out to engage the community?
Within our authority as a school committee,
Uh-huh,
we will engage the community.
yeah.
To inform, we could say, to inform our.
No, I guess my question is,
Which might be first part.
what school committee, what authority does the school committee have to engage the community? Is that spelled out somewhere?
I think it's a representative body
Okay.
that the community represent. You should. to make it-
I think-
Because I know we have authority on budget and policy, et cetera,
Right.
but I wasn't, is that spelled out?
I think the community gave you the authority to represent them
Yeah.
because they voted you.
Yeah, because they don't want to deal with this, so they don't want to enforce
I
it.
think that's the liaison.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they give you the authority to make these decisions because they voted to you. You have, in a sense, a responsibility back to them to,
Well, I like that word, responsibility. You should throw that in there.
see a good place to put it, Chris.
I don't,
wanna leave it tight?
I would replace authority with responsibility.
No,
Well, you can take out will, and you can say we have the responsibility to engage the community.
Okay.
You know what, you can put authority and responsibility, because you can make an argument with authority comes responsibility.
Oh, nice.
oh, you have
Sounds like a novel.
responsibility. I like that. I'm gonna start
I think
thinking
that's
about
okay.
that instead of chart paper.
You cannot have authority without responsibility.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I don't want to tell that. So within our authority and responsibilities as a school committee, we will engage our community to inform decision-making that is focused on student achievement, or to inform the decisions we make to improve student outcomes.
What do you think the goals of the school is?
I know.
If you had to,
I don't like the word structure. I agree with the
Yeah.
concept. I want
Yeah,
to
okay.
state it.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
To inform the decisions we make to improve student outcomes or
yeah,
enhance
there's a
student
little
achievement.
forward, right?
Yeah.
At the end.
Maybe to improve the decisions that impact student learning.
To inform the decisions we make that impact student achievement.
Student learning.
Well, yeah. I wonder if we went earlier. Within our authority and responsibility as a school committee to focus on student achievement.
Is there a better word than focus? Improve student
Elevate,
achievement?
yeah.
Is that the right word to use?
I don't like to inform decision making.
You like what, Julie?
I don't like to inform decision making. That's my struggle on this.
Would you rather place with
No, I'm struggling to find out what I would replace it with.
influence? How
Um,
much is can replace inform?
No, that sounds like very long.
It should, what's wrong with informed, Julie?
I'm not gonna be able to articulate it.
It seems like the information we get from the community should inform how we think about something.
You feel like it should be more like a two-way street than just inform,
Yeah, like help with more.
working together.
Yeah.
Conjunction, but it's hard to articulate. It goes back to this bullet point in here, the quote that Laurie said,
To the community.
with, not to,
But engaging the community
engaging is, yeah,
is
is two-way, informing is a one-way word.
Under this, we're gonna bullet those things, right?
Yeah.
So that, the details of two-way interactions, so,
Maybe making it too complicated.
yeah, I think we
Yeah, maybe.
Sometimes they get unwieldy,
Yeah.
a simple statement.
Yeah, we're getting
Yeah,
to,
good point.
we're getting to.
I think as long as you can look at it and as a committee define what it is, it's simply a statement.
guide.
Guide is a good word.
I like that with that word, that's a good one.
We like guide.
I don't like that.
Oh.
No, but seriously, because if they're guiding our decision, they didn't vote on us, well, they didn't vote on us, but they don't elect the committee to then guide them into their decision. They elect the committee to make the decision. We're kind of turning it around saying, hey, listen, we want your input here.
So
So,
then inform.
I'm like, guide.
Right.
I kind of know what you're saying about inform, but you can't articulate it, so I'm having kind of a similar
Right?
problem. I think it's solved with Lori's suggestion to replace the word to.
Yeah.
What do you mean, to replace the word "to" with what?
So, we will engage our community to inform decision-making, sounds like we're putting our responsibility on them to
Yes.
make the decision.
Agreed.
But if we say something like our community, with the goal to, or with hopes to, then you start to get convoluted,
Yeah.
so maybe we should start.
I liked how you said the word input, you could say to add input.
Gather information, gather input.
Yeah, if there was like a thesaurus, something.
Gather information, you just said, right? Gather information.
Gather.
But inform would be another way to say gather information.
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit more. I think
I see what you're saying, I understand what you're saying. What Mike is saying is that the way it's stated, we're saying simply, we're going to take what, whatever the scoop is, and that's going to then decide it, when there may be other parameters at play, like, and there may be curriculum that we're deciding on, or something that the teachers are doing with their,
One piece.
I see what, yeah.
So it's, so say that you say that.
to gather information. That-
What can you say to help?
Gather information to help
guide
decision making.
I'm gonna get a scoop.
To help guide decision making, do it.
You want something industrial, we'll go with that.
Yeah, I would say help guide decision making.
Yeah, I'm averse to the word guide as well.
Oh, you don't like guides? Who else said they don't like guides? Mike said he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Help inform, is that,
Health informed?
does that change anything for you?
I like the word help, my favorite is
Because
help.
it suggests there's more
Right, yeah.
at play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that to help.
I don't love it.
Okay, so do we have enough here
Yeah.
as an overarching statement, and then this comes under that, is that correct? And I think maybe, I'm just wondering, is there anything else we want to have on that list? Because then we have a bit of discussion.
So let me just,
I'd like to just say something too about this Boston document. The second page that has a timeline of engagement. That there is just a reminder to me that this is a long-term process. This is not a thing tonight, it's not a goal this year. I think we should be really committing ourselves to a longer process of further refining what we mean, what our strategies are, how we use this, what our goals are over time. Just a comment.
okay, so,
Yeah, you know what I would like to know about this document, everywhere in here they talk about online, website, social media. And we just had that conversation about, well, who's gonna run that, who's gonna make sure it's fair, who's gonna make sure bias doesn't get, so I'm curious kind of how they actually is.
well, and this is, don't forget, this is the administration. This is not the school curriculum. This is an office within the Boston Public Schools.
So probably like their marketing person is gonna do it.
We'll get the senior director of community engagement.
Yeah, that person is probably doing it.
Well, we can have them, they can assign it to somebody, assistant.
Yeah, also it's Boston, so they've got
Yeah, he's been,
resources.
And this is what probably going on.
So just, we
Yeah.
Just a department.
we have a hard stop at 4:00.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to take we won't do this. What do I want to do? So sometime you might want to read through the 3 scenarios. Because there are things to tease apart in there about, how would you handle this situation? What might be different ways to handle it? What would be the most effective way to handle it? I tried to do 3 different scenarios. One that was really focused on sort of a one issue, like a parent with a one issue problem, that was their child. One that was a parent who had an issue that really kind of fell under policy or the school committee, which would have a different path than, a parent who might be meeting the director.
Maybe you help me.
Or, I don't know.
Yeah.
And one that was something that school committees face all the time, where there's a decision that has to be made by the administration, and the community doesn't like it, but you can't say anything. So, how do you handle that and sort of the community engagement? Some of that is having like the trust, being able to build the trust of the community. When people are coming to this, I've had it happen, people come to the school committee and say, why did that teacher get let go? We like that teacher. And you can't,
As I'm talking about these, as these kinds of examples, I think are really useful. In fact, Megan and others have brought them up when we did the trainings before the meetings. Sometimes Megan would say like, well, how should we handle this scene, right? You've asked us that sometimes, and we've talked about those things. And so I'm wondering if we might consider something like, instead of a full meeting to just talk about these, do we do like a mini time session where we talk about 1 or 2 of these and have it be shorter? You get on, you have a conversation, you get off as sort of a continuation of the training session, whether something like that is people would want to do and find beneficial or not, because otherwise these will end up in our folders. And we won't really get to talk about them the way that would be useful to us, I think.
So the other, I just think we don't have time to go through them tonight and sort of finish up the other part of the discussion I'd like to have. I'm just gonna, we talk a lot about the importance of the open meeting law and following the open meeting law. So I just want to give some thought, and social media kind of rolls into this a little bit. There's a quote in there, which is directly from the open meeting law guide, the AG's open meeting law guide. The purpose of the open meeting law is to ensure transparency in deliberations on which public policy is based. Because the democratic process depends on the public having knowledge about the considerations underlying governmental action, the open meeting law requires, with some exceptions, that meetings of public bodies be open to the public. It also seeks to balance the public's interest in witnessing the deliberation of public officials with the government's need to manage its operations efficiently. So if you think about the open meeting law, can you think of some ways where you feel like the open meeting law helps that public engagement, or ways where you feel it might hinder public engagement? Or some examples might be social media.
Yeah.
Might be agenda development.
I'd say hindrance is definitely social media. There's something that's out there and we know we can respond to it or like it or whatever it happens to be, but if so many of us happen to do that, then we're in violation, right? But it's only just to engage with the community and give the right information.
So, and this is somewhere you see the administration or thinking about how do we as a committee handle social media. because it is giving information. If someone can get on and say, you know, the correct information is in this document, here's a link to it. Or it's in the minutes of this meeting, here's a link to it. That doesn't violate, one of you doing that, it doesn't violate the open meeting law because you're just giving a fact. You're not venturing an opinion. Does that make sense?
Sure, then, yeah.
So sometimes, or, you know, calling up Jeff and saying, this is out there, is there a way we can get the right information out to people? But you are absolutely right that sometimes in trying to do your work, ensure being done in public means that you're not on social media sites deliberating with each other, right? Because that would hinder the public's transparency and put you in violation. What about agendas?
I don't have a lot of experience with school committee agenda place.
Or, you know, the development of the posting of the website. Do you ever feel like that might slow down your work?
Have open meeting law might slow down
Yeah, yeah.
to develop the agenda.
It's tough because you can't add something last minute.
Yeah.
That's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. However, if you remember the public who had an opinion about what you might want to add to the agenda, and you didn't get a chance because you didn't see it on the agenda,
Yeah.
and you just started talking about it, then you
Some
sort of
things-
slow down your work, but you serve the public better.
I know, but some things it's like, you know, like a club from the high school just needs approval. I mean, is the public gonna care? Or, you know, then we gotta wait a whole other month or a whole other 2 weeks or whatever. So I think some certain things, it's like, you know, we gotta follow the process, just slows it down. But yeah, absolutely, something big like, oh, we're gonna have a COVID vote or something. Yeah, like people wanna know, they wanna be informed, they wanna be here or have their voice heard.
And we have just a couple minutes for you to look through the social media for school committee members that's in there. And see if you have any questions, anything that resonates with you particularly, or anything you have questions about in that. This gets to that balance with social media. I think it's the way people get information. So it is a tool that's out there. And if you're careful about how you use the tool so that you're informing the public, it's a really good tool for you to use. It's when it becomes back and forth in deliberation, or even sometimes back and forth in deliberation with the public, which would be better served having it in a more open public forum.
Could we post the agendas on social media?
Yeah.
Do we?
Well, they get posted by, I think.
We don't have that.
I know it's a Tohoto PTO, and we post it once you can see it.
Oh, on that page? I'm talking like in that BBRC.
They post it, the owners of the page post it.
Does Caitlin? I think she does sometimes, but I don't think she does every time.
No, I don't think, but no, they just do what that was referred to.
I've seen,
So they have, but it's just not consistent.
But they're not subject, they're not subject to the meeting.
It's not managed by us. I'm wondering like.
Well, posting the agenda.
I know-
No, the group she's talking about.
Oh.
I think it's important.
Yeah, they're not governed by.
Right.
We don't have the committee.
to your point of sharing factual information, nothing would prevent any of us from posting a link to a meeting agenda saying that the school committee is part of the agenda.
Yeah, just-
There are other
Wouldn't 6
communities,
times over, but.
in other communities, there are school committee members who will have a Facebook page.
Right.
And post the agenda, post the minutes, post reports. It's information. So it's,
That's a good idea.
Yeah, sometimes I think people don't know where to go to find things. Like, I know people knew there was a COVID dashboard and somebody's like, where is that thing again? And it's like, it's on the district website. Well, what's that? It's like, okay, yeah, that's right. You probably never just like go to the district website. because Jeff sends an email every week, so people read that. They don't have to go to the website to get it.
Well, if it's on the web, I mean, I look at some school district websites, and they really only have the goals that go up to 2016 on your website. What happened to the past 5 years?
Ours website, pretty
Yeah,
good.
their websites,
Yeah. Christie does.
I can find, usually if I'm looking for something, I can find it on the website. Any last, I think we took a little bit longer to get to that definition, but I think it was good discussion and good work. Okay. And I think Jeff, you're sort of putting it in the, where does this fit in all the work was a really important part of the discussion, but it's not, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, that it exists within the work that you do. I think is a really helpful contribution in the discussion.
And so the next step here, you'll type something up here, is that right, from these notes?
I can do that.
Oh, I was assuming,
No, I
I'm
will,
sorry.
I will. No, just remind me to take a picture of that before.
Yeah, and then, we'll at least have that as a touchstone.
Yep.
When we think about this going forward. I'm not expecting that we'll be changing our goals a lot this year, but we should start to reference these, commitments and actions, as we're making decisions. We should start to become part of our framework, I guess. And then, my assumption is that maybe next year we get into it another layer. Is there anything else people want to see happen from this work tonight, in the short term?
I think maybe more surveys, probably on more work, sorry, Jeff.
No,
Like,
you should do your own survey.
I'll do a survey.
There was just quickly surveys.
I just think that's the best way to get community, yeah, like especially when we have big decisions and it's like, some people, again, I only know what my people think, but a lot of those people think like me, so it's.
Right.
It would be helpful, especially in
Well,
tonight's
survey.
decision.
You get a lot of information from it.
But open forum is a great idea, that's the other thing, I was thinking like one time a year, we could do like a forum where like, there's no official business, it's just all parent open comment, and we try to at least make commitments to what we're gonna do to address issues on the spot, so they don't have to, all right, we'll add that to our agenda in 6 months, it's like, all right, we're gonna do this, once a year.
That sounds difficult to me.
Dorothy, do you know any school committees that do their own surveys? I mean, I haven't seen it, I mean, most of them come in the school.
No, no. They may work with the administration to say, here's the information we want. The other thing I have to be careful of is too many surveys. People will stop responding. There's always a survey to respond to.
Yeah, we haven't had any this year though.
Plus, we also have access to surveying our school families more than we do the broader community. And therefore, keep thinking about how they're doing on some certain issues. Dorothy, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Pushing our thinking along.
You are welcome.
We will see if we can make use of it in the coming months. And we look forward to seeing this sort of on the page a little bit. And with the assumption that the person that we look at will want to revise it, and sort of massage it, wordsmith it. But we hopefully get some core ideas.
Well, yeah, hopefully
Just
you're
right.
90% of the way there.
And thank you also for these resources, because these also are things that we can continue to look at in the future.
And if you don't mind, I'll just.
Yeah, quite a bit. Thank you. All right, so we're ready to move back into the business portion of our meeting. Everybody okay, ready? Yes. All right, so we start with, well, actually, the agenda says that we go to the discussion with the DESI letter, but I'm wondering if, with the group's approval, if we could move back, if we could hear from Jeff first and then do the DESI letter after we hear from Jeff, as whatever he says could inform our thinking.
Sure.
Sure.
All right, thank you. So, Jeff, why don't you go to you, the superintendent's update here?
Okay, so one thing that doesn't need a vote, that I did send you, is we got some suggestions from the nurses that were sent, January 10. There were 8 specific points, and I gave my recommendations on those. Most of them did not, none of them actually required a school committee action, in light of the new proposal from the Department of Ed. And also, as I said, when I looked through those, the overall theme was that the nurses were not able to get their work done. So I did answer those, and I sent those to you. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. But what I really want to get to is the proposal. It's in a drive, it says proposal to adopt DESE new COVID-19 testing program options for K-12 schools dated January 25, 2022. So the background here is this. Because test and stay has identified very few positive cases, both statewide and our district data also parallel to that, the state data. And because test and stay, and associated contact tracing across the state and in our districts has overwhelmed the nurses in keeping them from doing many of the other duties they have, administering meds, and just treating other students who come down during the day. The department recommended a different testing protocol than we use today. And so what I talk about next has been endorsed by the nurses, and in fact, they wrote the procedure. So the new protocol that's recommended by the Department of Ed and by our nurses replaces test and stay and contact tracing, and replaces it with symptomatic testing and at-home testing. We currently, if you remember, some of you weren't there, but when we did the original reentry 2021 plan, there were 3 options that the state had for testing that we could opt into. Test and stay, symptomatic testing, and pool testing. We could opt into any one of those or all of them. We opted for test and stay and symptomatic testing. Now, fast forward to today, or now, in order to be eligible for the new test at home program, you had to have either signed up for symptomatic testing or pool testing originally. And if you did, you can now go back and sign up for one of those, but you have to be part of it. So the idea is that you have to have a layered approach. You can't just do the stay-at-home testing. You have to do pool testing, symptomatic testing, and stay-at-home testing. So the protocol that's recommended, that you're going to vote on, is symptomatic testing along with the at-home testing. So if you look at that document just briefly, the first part of the entire program is symptomatic testing. Now, we already do symptomatic testing, but in our district currently, you voted for symptomatic testing, but right now, symptomatic testing triggers test and stay protocol. So the only reason you're voting on this again is because this symptomatic testing does not trigger test and stay, and it also does not trigger contact tracing. So that's why it requires a re-vote. It's an amendment to what was voted on earlier on. So we are doing testing, the one that's recommended by the nurses, what they wrote here, and the one recommended by the Department of Ed, which is, we had some flexibility, and this is what the nurses came up with. So in this program, so a student comes down, they have any one of these symptoms. They could be vaccinated or unvaccinated. We're not going to, again, that was an equity issue, and I think someone brought that up, and I think Mike alluded to it. A parent certainly brought it up. It's really not going to matter. So you see that protocol, if the rapid test results are positive, the nurse will contact the parent's child, the child's parents, and then and then do some education with them, just go through some protocols. The nurse will encourage the parent to contact the child's primary care physician and then inform all out of school close contacts, inform Christie, the Department of Education states still requires that we report positive tests, so Christie does that every week. She does it on a rolling basis. I don't know how she does it on a rolling basis. She does it on a rolling basis. She gets them all in. Deadline on that, I think is Wednesday or Thursday. Inform the principal of the school, and then enter the results of CIC, which we currently do now. And that generates an automatic email. That's all part of an accountability that has to stay in place. And then the nurse will be following protocol A, which is a student to test positive for COVID. If the test is negative, then the nurse would just treat the child just like they would treat any other child who comes down with a headache, stomach ache, whatever. The second part of the program, so that's the symptomatic part, and it's just very straightforward. Again, it eliminates any contact tracing or test and stay.
Again, what happens if a student comes and the parent has not given consent to be tested?
Then they don't test them.
And so what happens to them? If they come down there, I assume they're there because they have
Then
some symptom on this list.
Then they just treat them as if they would be normally treated. So if they come down, they have a fever, the nurses, as always, will just use their judgment. If they think they're sick enough, they'll call the parent and say, we suggest you don't take the child. Just like any other kid who comes down with any other illness.
So many times they'll get sent back to the classroom.
Depending on how sick they are, yeah. Or they'll stay down in the nurse's office. But that's what always happens. There's really no difference. And remember, out of the step test and stay, out of the contact tracing tests we've done 1,700. We've only had 14 or 15 roughly that have been positive from the test and stay. I know Karen reported on a higher number. I think you.
Megan was asking.
Yeah.
Janelle clarified it. It was actually only 14, and I think that's an important thing to note. It's only 14 cases were actual positives from testing today.
Right. We've had more positives than that. Those were symptomatic positives. So you got to think that a lot. The actual, and if you look statewide, it's been the same thing. And so roughly the transmission in the school has been, 1/5, 20% of what the community in the state has been. And that's worth noting. That's a lot of work put into the test and stay program. And we don't get a lot, we haven't gotten a lot out of it. So the second part of that program is the at-home testing. And this is really the only part you have to vote on tonight. And it's just simply every other week, parents will have to opt into this. You don't need a consent, you need an opt-in for this, because we're not actually doing anything. Every other week, parents who decide to opt in will get a kit, a test kit. The kit will have 2 tests in it. And there is one change here. We've been working on this and had a leadership this morning. Many of the principals that our principals have been talking to are recommending a Wednesday test and not a Monday test. And the reason it's a Wednesday test is that they are positive. They're only out of school Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's less time they're out of school. The state is so the program's open to all staff and all students. So we've already ordered the staff kits, which came today. And so we're hoping to start that program on Friday. Same thing every other week. They'll be off. The staff and students will be will be off by 1 week, so it'll still be the same protocol. We have 1 kit, with 2 tests. Everybody's gonna be asked to test on Wednesday of each week, and then they get a new kit. Now, we put tentative in here because it relies on the test being sent to us. So,
This is a good question, so when they test, are they then responsible, like, is Christie to then log all of those things, or is it just like a, you'll let us know if you're positive?
Chrissy doesn't do anything except log in positive testing.
Perfect.
So, you take the test, you're negative, then and that's it. If you're positive, you go through that protocol that's in here, the next one. The student test won't be sent out till, I think, later this month, so we're hoping to get that program distributing to the students on the 4th. But again, we're still working out those statistical pieces. I do have one thing that is not in the guide. We just worked on it today. I know you're gonna ask questions about it, so, you always want to know the logistical pieces. So, I just sort of what we're working on. Yeah. I just gave it to them, they're really the most important.
For people who
I don't, they'll get this tomorrow. We haven't released it, that's why it's going to go to the school committee. So we've been working on this, and this is just basically, it's probably public information by now. This is a template that the Department of Ed sent us. It's an interactive template. We just put our letterhead in there, so this is nothing we made some edits to it. It's just to introduce the program. I'll tell you, Janelle, this is the first project, and she really knocked it out of the park. So Janelle, today we added we thought parents would want to see at least a tentative schedule, so it's a calendar here. So the letter really looks like this page plus this page here. So it talks about, and again, this was sent to us from the Department of Ed. These are all interactive links. And so a parent will go on, they will be able to opt into the program this way, into the at-home testing program. And there's also a link, I believe it is. Oh, yeah. Right under the calendar, you can see COVID-19 testing programs in our school. So, and a lot of these links are repeats, so if you miss it on one page, you get it on another. And so you see there, you get the at-home testing piece, so you can, and it's a Google form, they'll just go in, and as soon as you log in, it'll all be collected. This will be sent electronically tomorrow, and then number 3 is symptomatic testing. If you already opted into symptomatic testing, which you probably did, you don't have to do anything. If you did not, and you want to test, and you want your child to be tested, you want to give us permission to test them if they are sick or if they have symptoms, then you'll have to go in and you'll have to sign up for symptomatic testing.
Yeah, what if a parent wants to remove the permission that might have been given previously to allow symptomatic testing?
You could just call the school and tell them to take them off the list. So.
How do we know? How would a parent know? Because,
To know if you signed the kid up?
yes. I don't think I did. How would we know? Is there a way to check?
I guess you could call the school.
It's just a Google Doc.
You'd have to call the school, I mean,
The nurses
I mean,
The nurses
remember the responsibility part? I think, you have to know if you sign a kid up or not. If you didn't, you can call the school, you can always.
Well, there
call
was
the
a paper
school.
document and then there was a Google document. It got very confusing at least for us.
Well, you know what, we had to merge a lot of stuff early on. This time, they gave us a Google Doc, they would just do, okay, we've done all of the all of the mistakes. Here's how to set up the Google Docs. So they made it a little easier. That was the first time through, so you may have thought, okay, I don't know if I sign up or not. You will if your kid was tested, but if they did it, and you want to know, you can call it through.
So can I ask just a quick question? So there's two different things around it. There's the at-home testing, and then there's the symptomatic if you're in the school and you go down and you've opted in.
Yeah,
If you sign up for one, do you automatically get the other, or do you just sign up for
you
both?
have to sign up for both.
Okay.
Because
So
they're
you can sign up for one
voluntary,
if
these
you
are
want.
voluntary programs, so
Yeah.
you could do sign up for the symptomatic testing, and then say, I don't want to test at home, and don't sign up for it. Or you might say, I want to test every week, but I don't want you putting something in my kid's nose. So it gives the parent, flexibility, so you can still get in the test, it's not like if you don't do this, you can't do the other.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No.
Great explanation.
The only asymptomatic testing then we will be participating in is the at-home testing.
Correct, and that'll be once a week, if you are.
If you want.
So you said those at-home tests don't get reported to the school, it's just for,
If you're positive.
if you're positive, you tell the school and if it's home goes to the protocol.
You have to,
If you're
know,
negative, you never hear.
you just come to school. So,
So I guess my main question on the at-home testing is, it's optional, so if the kid doesn't opt in, they're not testing, what's the point?
say again?
It's optional, so if a family doesn't choose to do it, then what's the point of it? There's not, they just keep going to school, and if they're symptomatic, then they'll get noticed at some point. Otherwise, it's just back to.
Yeah, and that's why it's voluntary, I mean, if your kid's sick, I mean, again, it's
Yeah,
a responsibility,
responsibility.
your kid's sick, you don't want to test them, don't send them to school, I mean, that's just irresponsible.
Yeah.
Right, so,
I just have one more question. I was just thinking about the fact that if you test positive but you're asymptomatic, it was one thing for vaccinated, it's one thing for unvaccinated. So if you're home and you do a test and you're asymptomatic, what happens then? And if you're positive?
then you have to follow the protocol,
That's what I was gonna
you gotta report a positive test, and then you should get the more advanced test, yeah. If it shows a positive, then it does.
Yeah, because.
I know, remember, these
For
tests,
everyone, not
I think this was covered before, but these tests are, and so the last commissioners meeting, there was so advised by physicians, this test is a lot less sensitive, than I believe it's called the PCR test. But one of the things that physicians said is that this is more likely to, even though it's less sensitive, it's more likely to pick up the amount of, once you have enough virus in you that you're contagious, that it would pick it up. That's the thinking at least. So,
I have two questions. So the first one is in this letter that you guys wrote, I think you said Janelle wrote it. It says, if your child is a potential contact in school, they may continue to come to school, do not have to quarantine. Does not address what happens if your child is a contact outside of school. Let's say little sister has COVID, big brother doesn't have symptoms.
I think you wrote an email like that. You
did.
come to school.
What?
There's no contact tracing, so you come to school.
So even if you're,
Or you stay home, at the time with your parents, with the parents.
so there's no protocol, if one kid has COVID and the other doesn't, the one without COVID, the one in the household who still hasn't tested positive yet, but may test positive, can go to school.
It wasn't before either.
There absolutely was. If you were a close contact outside of school, you automatically fell into protocol C.
No, you didn't.
Only if unvaccinated.
You absolutely had to report it.
No.
Only
If
if
you were a
unvaccinated.
close contact outside of school,
No, not if the contact happened outside of school, we weren't responsible for that. We weren't responsible for close contacts that would happen within the school. That we identified, so.
because shaking your head. I believe that if you, I thought it said in your re-entry plan, I mean, I'll have to go back and look, but I thought if you were a close contact outside of school, You fell into protocol C. We're not allowed to test and stay. I'm not debating
Oh,
that.
okay, yeah, all right.
But you were supposed to quarantine. You were not welcome in school. Now, whether a parent did not report to the nurse, but if you were a close contact, that was part of what the nurses had to do. You were supposed to contact the nurse.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about in terms of the testing.
No, you
Yeah.
were definitely not welcome to test and stay. If you were a close contact outside of school, you were definitely not welcome to test and stay, but you did have to quarantine. You just had to do the quarantine. For example, if little sister has COVID and big brother goes to Hondo, big brother couldn't go to school because little sister had COVID. That was an out of school close contact.
Because he was vaccinated.
He could if he was vaccinated, but he couldn't if he was unvaccinated. That was that is the
Yeah, I know what
current.
you're talking about.
So now I'm asking, what's the protocol now?
There is none, there's no contact tracing. There's no contact tracing. Again, if
If you're symptomatic, that's the only concern.
So you can go to school even if the sibling has COVID and you don't have symptoms.
So that's how it was with the vaccinated before this. Like wasn't this, if you were vaccinated before
Yes.
this and a sibling had
Yeah,
COVID?
no, I was thinking something else, but yes, you're right.
Yes, but if you're unvaccinated.
Right, which is
you were
like this,
supposed-
which, I mean, Hondo is this much of the population, so like, I know people are like, oh my God, I think what's gonna happen, but if you think about it, it's really been happening here. We have close to 80%, if you take out the preschoolers, of vaccinated people, and they've all been coming and going, and we haven't seen our numbers soar, or, you know what I mean, it's been what it's been, with Omicron soared, but it's just been that way for a while, so I don't see a huge change, because that's been the protocol, unless you're unvaccinated, in which case, you know, you're out forever.
Which but the two elementary schools, I think the vaccine rate is still pretty low, right?
Yeah.
So I think in the elementary schools that was happening frequently. Which in high school, quite honestly, you're not really sharing germs with a sibling versus like when you're, 5 and 7, whatever one kid gets, the other's gonna get it.
There was no policing of that.
There was no policing, there was honor system, absolutely, Anna.
Yeah.
But it was the nurses were enforcing that. They were saying, and same thing, if one sibling in the school had it, let's say there's 2 kids at VES, that other sibling wasn't coming to school. That sibling wasn't even in test and stay, that sibling was home. So what's gonna happen now, there's 2 kids at VES, one has symptoms and has COVID, the other one has no symptoms. Are they welcome to come to school without being tested or anything? They can just go to school?
Yeah, I mean, you're a parent, what would you do?
Keep my kid home. You're asking me, I would keep my kid home, I don't spread COVID. Or give it to the
Yeah,
teacher.
I mean, again, these are voluntary programs. We've had very, very low transmission rate in the school. There's a point, I mean, we're trying to get, I think, the Department of Ed, has said that the rate of transmission inside school and the actual positive cases inside the school versus in the community, there's an enormous difference between those two things. So we're just saying, the protocol is just saying that we do away with contact tracing. If you have a child that's positive and is sick, and you have another child that's in the house, we don't have contact tracing. As a parent, you need to use your best judgment too. You just said, I want 7 in school.
But if there's no policy, so what you said first, I wanted to comment on that. You're right, we've had little transmission in school because of the protocols that the school has had in place. The school, I think because, you don't think because of the protocols in the school, we've had low transmission?
No, not necessarily. I don't see what they equate.
I mean,
We don't know.
we don't know. We don't know.
Either way.
We have no idea. We don't have data. I mean, if we took away masks and all the protocols and went back to normal and then we tracked
Oh, we're not
COVID,
talking
then
about masks.
I know, I'm just saying, we don't know. I think because of some of the protocols in school, that's why we have low school transmission.
Well, what data do you have? to prove
I don't
that?
have any data, I'm just saying.
Can I ask you, what do you mean by protocol? What protocol?
I mean, like, all right, if one kid is sick, the other kid stays home. Because the nurses have said in their letter, the nurses said they think most cases are the transmission goes through the household. If one kid gets it, it seems like the whole household gets it.
But what if they're asymptomatic and one kid has it, they're asymptomatic, and there's 3 kids in the house? They're gonna get sent to school anyway. I mean, they would have even they would have before.
They wouldn't have before, though.
Some people would have.
They just wouldn't have told.
Correct.
But if it was the same kid at the school, the nurses would have known and they would
Different
have said,
situation.
Yeah.
But even then, I don't think we had a
No,
nurse.
no, what I'm saying is, if one kid has it and they're asymptomatic and they don't get tested and there are two siblings, well, we have kids, a lot of them who are asymptomatic. I've talked to kids in this school who've had it and they don't know. So
I just had, all four of my kids had nothing.
So if they have
Just
brothers and
sniffles and
sisters, they came to school. One kid had it, symptomatic, and the siblings came to school. So,
oh, they did come to school because they're vaccinated.
well, my point is, if I had it, if we're all siblings here, and I have it, and we all live in the same house, but I'm asymptomatic, you're all gonna go to school, because I have it, I don't know I have it, you might have it too. We don't know that.
But then you spread it.
What?
But then it's spread, if you go to school, siblings.
It's everywhere.
I mean, we
I
have
think
that.
the thing we need
Even
to,
under the protocol before, I'm saying that then it would have spread.
the thing we need to keep in mind, I think we just spent 2.5 hours talking about student achievement. The point of getting rid of testing today is because all the time being spent on it. Nurses can't help other kids with other things they need help. Kids are missing instructional time, right? So what do we do in this year? We gotta think of, is this improving learning environment? We just spent 2.5 hours talking about that. That's the outcome we want, is to improve the entire environment, right? So when we discuss this, when we eventually vote on it, we gotta keep in mind, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get back to some semblance of normalcy to try to fix all the harm that's been done already. So if a kid's asymptomatic and he's got the flu, he's going to school, his siblings are going to school. If kid's asymptomatic, there's COVID, he's going to school, and his siblings are going to school. If they start to show signs in class, they go down to the nurse, they get tested. If they don't choose to opt in to get tested, the nurse makes a decision, which she's highly qualified to do, as to whether or not to go back to class, or parents call to pick them up. We're simply voting on whether or not we believe the nurse's protocol that they're bringing here is acceptable.
Now, that would happen before too, if the kid's asymptomatic, and many of these kids have been asymptomatic.
What would happen before if they were asymptomatic? You mean they wouldn't,
They would have thought, even under the other protocol, if they're asymptomatic, they would have come to school, and they could have possibly spread it, right?
I didn't think that was the case, but I don't know.
No, he's talking about
If
asymptomatic.
they're asymptomatic, they wouldn't
Yeah, they
know, unless you're
wouldn't
testing
know.
every day.
Yeah, oh, yeah, if they're like, Julie, like, if your kids were at school, you didn't know, I don't know how you found out.
But it was a sports.
And yet we still had
Oh,
virtually maybe 1.5%, I think, is that the 1.4%? Is that the number I saw in there? Like, virtually no spread.
Here's the other thing you have to do.
Right.
If you're in the test and state protocol, if you're a student in the test and state protocol, you lose roughly over the course of 5 days, a week, you lose roughly 5 hours of instruction.
I agree with that.
That is not equity.
That's a lot of time that you lose.
I agree,
in
yeah.
the test and stay, to have a program in place that's been so inefficient.
I'm not against dropping test and stay. I agree with dropping test and stay. I don't necessarily think that it's, I think it might be more harm than it's worth. But I guess my concern is just, if we're not doing test and stay, and people are gonna opt, and people have the freedom to opt out of symptomatic testing, and they have the freedom to opt out of this at-home testing. And now it's like, okay, if it's going through a household, and then they're gonna send the kid to school, I guess my concern is, well, is the spread gonna increase?
Well, there's still a safeguard there on the symptomatic piece, even if they don't choose to test, do symptomatic testing. If they're noticed that they've got, kids sitting there shaking with chills, or you've got a fever.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna get home.
They're still getting pulled out, so there is a safety gate there. Even
And I
if
trust the
choose not
nurses
to
with that.
opt in,
Mhm. No, I agree.
And doing away with test and stay gives the nurses more time to catch those, or look at these. Or if teachers aren't having to do contact tracing, gives them more time to pay attention to these things, to pick them fast.
And to your point about out of school contact. You're assuming everyone's ethical as it might be. But that's not the case necessarily.
You're right.
A parent who can't afford to stay home and has one kid that might have had COVID and three others that need to go to school, very well may have sent those kids to school.
Well, and that's true about the flu. I mean, we run into those situations all the time where a kid comes in and he's, they're sweating, hit your parents sending you to school. So you're right. I mean,
There's no doubt, people are sending their kids to
that's
school
what
sick,
happens.
there's no doubt, and that's not COVID, that's through the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you have to remember that this was written, I mean, the nurses wrote that other document, but the nurses wrote this document too. This protocol is what they wrote. And I trust their opinion in that they know how much time they spend during the week doing tests and stay. They see the benefit of it. But they also know that because they take so much time doing this, what they can't, all of the other things they cannot do. They also know how much time students are out of class because they're involved in the test and stay protocol. So, this isn't Zangy making this up. I don't go in there and do that stuff. So I trust what the nurses, I'm telling you here what they're putting forward.
How do we know if this new protocol is working? Are we relying on the State Department to compile state level data to tell us that, or do we have any local metrics to make decisions from?
I mean, I don't even know if we completely defined it except to say if the cases all of a sudden go through the roof. I mean, that's certainly an indicator.
And so through the roof is very ill-defined, right? So how do you think about it?
I think we'll have to monitor it. I mean, we're gonna have to have state data. We'll see if I think the data has to be collected.
So you're saying to use state data to compare how we're doing compared to the state?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we did now. I mean, that's how this happened. We took state data and then we looked at our data and we said, okay, we're not getting many cases. When you look at the percentage of tests we do versus how many positive tests we actually get out of it, so they're actionable. And then we looked at the state data and said, well, what roughly where the state is with this.
What if we have more COVID cases springing up than the state is showing?
Well, I guess we're gonna have to just monitor it and see if it's something that's, within reason or if it's so high that we can't run the classes anymore. So, I mean, it's a new protocol.
So we would need regular report outs, I think, at upcoming school committee meetings to
Well, it doesn't
monitor this.
eliminate the
Well, not the
dashboard, the
dashboard.
dashboard still collects positive cases.
We'll still have the dashboard every week,
Right,
so we'll be able to see if the cases go up after this.
yeah, but I think we also want some anecdotal information from the nurses as they are.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, yeah.
I'd love to hear from them, yeah.
I mean, that's reasonable to see how it's, maybe if they're seeing more symptomatic things, that would,
Or if they're finding that the families are sending in many more sick children than we had before.
Yeah.
Or, there could be a number of stories there. My understanding of this proposal is that there are three parts. And I'm just going to reiterate these because I think we'll take one vote that encompasses these three parts. One, if we approve this proposal, we will continue symptomatic testing as described by the nurses here. We will discontinue contact tracing and test and stay. And three, we will offer families the option to sign up for rapid antigen at-home testing and receive those kits at home.
that sounds accurate.
Okay,
They do
everybody's
that
clear
one.
on those three pieces that come with this proposal.
Yes.
Okay, are we ready to move on from here? Do you feel ready to?
I have one more
Go
question,
ahead.
one more, it's more of a comment. I guess, I kind of feel that maybe this might need, maybe a little bit more community engagement. I don't know, Jeff, have you gauged how people feel about this? I mean, I'm sure some people are like, yeah, no big deal. And I think others are gonna be like, oh my God, I'm not sending my kid to school this month. There is gonna be a group of people that feel that way. So I guess I'm just wondering, you know, have you talked to anyone else? Have the nurses talked to anybody? Do you have any feelers out on how people feel about this? And would it make sense to maybe gather some data?
We're planning on starting this program this week. You don't want to vote on it, we don't start the program. This program is very highly subscribed to throughout the state by other school districts. What we do plan to do is, we're going to send an equity survey out, and Susan and I had actually talked about this earlier. We'll include some questions, and we could probably develop some more questions actually, because, you know, once we get a couple weeks of this going, we can, you know, maybe you can help develop a couple more questions. The survey's not out yet, we're still developing it. But maybe we can add a few more questions and just relative to this. And the equity piece, 'cause that's really what it is. I mean, my child being treated unfairly because you made this decision to go with this program. So it may be something very specific about switching from test and stay and contact tracing to this. I think that would be a fair question. I don't know how it would be.
It's after the vote. It is after the vote, so what happened?
But you want to go back on it? You vote to go back to?
So Megan's piece about community engagement, I mean, you're saying this protocol has been written by the nurses?
This protocol is written by the nurses.
So-
and
So the community, over the weeks and months, the years we've been doing this, the community has been begging us to listen to our local health officials.
That's true.
Who's more local of a health official than our school nurses who are in school every day, dealing with every single one of these kids, same kids day to day? They know, I would trust the nurses more than I would trust anyone else. I mean, the community wants us to listen to local health officials.
And I would
They're
say,
local.
I mean, I've been very upfront about getting an extra nurse and all of that stuff, but I have to tell you, the nurses, I don't think they can sustain the pace they're at right now.
Oh, I agree.
With these programs, so,
I agree.
you know, so we got something in place that it seems to me has not been very effective at slowing down of the goal of slowing down COVID in our schools. Possibly, you know, and by nurses' accounts. So this frees up our nurses, gets students back into school. Been endorsed by the nurses, it's been endorsed by the Department of Ed, been endorsed by the Massachusetts Department of Health. So could it just blow up and you have to revisit and say, okay, this isn't working? Yeah, I mean, your vote isn't in stone. I mean, it's a guiding vote to get the program going. It's not like whether you're the only district doing it. I mean,
And the committee.
we made the decision,
Policy, right?
we made the decision to opt into this already before the vote, I can tell you that.
You have the authority.
We did that so we could get in line, because the Department of Ed said, if you don't, then you're down here. And we're a small district, so I'm always conscious of, if we don't get in right away, you know, they're not gonna prioritize 1,000-kid district over a 4,000-kid district. So I always think, okay, we gotta jump on this, and then if somebody tells me not to do it later, okay, it's easy to pull it back, but at least we're in the queue. Right.
I want to just reiterate two things here. One is the question that I'm hearing the answer to Megan's question, how do people feel about this? Do we know? The answer is not really. We know that they care about what the nurses recommend, but we don't know how they feel about this. So I guess, ask also, where's the parent education piece on this? Because when I read this letter, it doesn't share the information that's in your proposal, which gives the rationale for why test and stay, contact tracing should go.
That rationale was taken up, most of it was taken up in the Department of Ed memo, but the.
Right, but it's useful, that's my point, and it's not.
No, there are links, this is an interactive, I mean, you just got a hot copy.
I understand there's a link, but that's not the same thing, Jeff, as putting your rationale on the front page. that let's, or on the second page. I feel like people, if I were a parent in the district right now, and I were not following this conversation maybe that Desi's put out, and I got this, I'd be like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, I think Susan has.
All right, this isn't brought out yet.
Jen,
You want us to put this on this?
Susan has a fantastic point. I think your first line needs to be, based on the evidence we have from our current test and state program and state data, in-school spread is virtually non-existent. I mean, a message like that at the top, I think Susan is perfectly right.
Oh, this right here.
Yeah, the parent education piece, right?
Well, we can add this
Copy
to
and paste
this.
from that first
Right,
letter,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That would be a great idea. And definitely give the link to that Desi thing, because I think a lot of people, I mean, it's 4
I mean, a lot of people think
Oh,
that
it's Monday,
it's
right?
like a death trap going to school.
I mean,
Data shows it's the exact opposite.
This is a pretty, big shift in life. We've been invested a lot in all these protocols about test and stay and, contact tracing. We put a lot of energy into this. Parents were trying to figure out all the protocol A, B, C, D, and all of a sudden, we're doing a mega shift here. And I feel like we've got to bring people along with you. You've got to show them why this is warranted and, why you're making this change, or else we're all gonna be flooded with phone calls. So I would, I want to just ask again, are we ready to move on to the other topic and then we'll take votes?
Yes.
Okay, so the remaining piece is about, sending a letter to Desi requesting evidence of mask and vaccine efficacy. I don't know if you want to speak to this.
Sure. So I circulated a letter to everyone earlier today that essentially is in line with what we discussed at our last meeting. We will be coming out of today's meeting, proposing if this passes, to send a letter to Desi requesting evidence related to 2 items. First being evidence that masking students prevents the transmission of COVID-19 in schools. Second being that achieving an 80% vaccination rate prevents the transmission of COVID-19 in schools. This is all related to Desi's continuance of the masking requirement. At the end of this letter, it does state that on March 8th, the school committee will be reviewing this mask requirement as we voted at the last meeting. Therefore, we are requesting to provide this evidence by February 25th so that our committee can review and consider it in time for our meeting on March 8th.
Questions, comments, just to see if you're clear on what this is proposing and why. Adam, I have a couple questions. Given that we know that the Sandwich School Committee, Kate, has requested this information 4 times and not been successful in getting any informative response from Desi, do you expect anything different from our letter?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, we learned that over the weekend, I think, on some visitors. Several of us remember.
Yeah. And I've heard of that there are other towns, I guess, who have done similar thing. Can you describe, since you initiated this, Adam, can you describe what your motivation is behind the letter? Like, what do you want to accomplish from this?
I think speaking to what we talked about earlier when it comes to being proactive, we know that Desi is going to make some kind of decision about extending the mask mandate beyond February 28th, in advance of February 28th. And being prepared to handle that new Desi recommendation or requirement at that point would be good to see if we can gather the information we need to appropriately discuss their next decision at that time. So my goal was to get our hands on any information they might have demonstrating that either of these 2 mitigation strategies are actually effective at preventing the transmission of COVID-19. I have yet to see the data that indicates that. I'm interested to see what they do.
I think that Jeff had said to me once, that really the Desi's information supporting that, you have to, I think you called it a logic trail, Jeff. Follow their logic trail. The Department of Ed relies on the Mass Department of Health, CDC, team of medical advisors. They reference those groups often, and they have links that will take you to the CDC page. in fact, there is a DESI page that has featured links that take you out to CDC and another page, which I can't read because of my printer. And if you follow the links, you can find reports and studies out there. You have to do the work. It's not like DESI's summarizing their 2 years of information and sources for us nicely, but if you follow the links, you can find, I followed one link today, it took me to 22 studies that were cited in some of their decisions. At the CDC page, right, it takes you out and about. So are you looking for the department to give you something short and sweet here, or do you think the committee ought to be doing legwork to go follow their logic trail as Jeff had said?
Their requirement, and I think we should draft their requirement of evidence, footnote of evidence that proves the point that either of these two strategies are effective.
These two specific,
Mitigation strategy, masking and vaccinating.
so you feel they should be presenting us, we shouldn't have to do the work to go find it?
They're requiring us to follow a mandate, they need to back that up with data.
Okay, and so if they don't come back with that information, which seems likely, what would you think should happen then?
We have a meeting on March 8th now, where we're going to discuss our mask requirement and talk about what we would do going forward.
Okay, so we just have to decide, what do we make of that?
Our agenda for the 8th, so.
Whether we have the DESI stuff or whether they respond or not, we're still gonna discuss it, I think is what we agree, right?
A lack of response.
Lack of response, yeah, that also agree.
I think you should be very careful about adding two variables to this equation. Big on the equations, If we're talking about this program, we don't know the effects of it. I mean, we know what the nurses wrote, we know all that. But when we talk about, how we're gonna monitor this, we don't have a definite way to do it really in terms of when we really know this is gonna work or not. So, and I think it's gonna need some time to do that. I mean, I definitely think it's worth trying. I take
He's talking about masks.
So I know that.
Okay.
I think it's worth trying. But if you now start to think about, because ultimately what you want to get at, what you're trying to get at is how we're going to get these masks off, right? So, and DESI already has, there's an off ramp for that. It's the 80% right now, and maybe that comes down. And so I don't know what your timeline is, maybe in your head you have something, but given the amount of questions on this committee just on this program, and I agree that it's a big show, I would think anything now that introduces getting rid of the mask, I wouldn't think it's appropriate until we know where this is. I mean, if we're doing okay with this, I would say, okay, then the next step is thinking about the mask. Because, even if they do respond, masking with mechanical devices, I think you could argue that when a kid wears it down here, it doesn't work. But
Or an adult.
yeah. I mean, but they can be made to work, because they're mechanical, so they can be made to filter things out, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so there's, I think probably the bigger question is maybe around why 80% versus herd immunity, which is 60%? Why were they 80%? It seems a lot more arbitrary than whether mask would work or not. This mask works like maybe better than that mask. So I think we'll end up in a place where we add too many variables to this equation. We don't know how this program is going to work. I think it's worth trying. I think the benefits may outweigh the risks, but I don't know that. And given the amount of questions that you guys have, all legitimate questions, probably concentrate on getting this underway. If it goes okay, then that's the next step. How do we now move to the
Well, the only challenge there is that the response will be so delayed, so it's best, I would say.
Well, they're probably not going to respond. I mean,
That's what I mean, so
they
it's
probably
hard.
won't respond, and if they do respond, they're going to point you to all of these other, they're going to say, okay, we did this, point you to the the DESI website that has all of that, including some of the things we just handed out. So I would just, I would just caution that we don't want to have a lot of variables, not a lot of balls in the air.
I would assume too that the department is thinking that same way. They've just initiated this program and they probably want to see what's the trend now, given this new program. And that's going to inform their thinking about whether they're ready to tackle masks. So probably they're pacing the same way.
I do hear a lot, rumblings from other districts and superintendents about the mask piece. So it's not like, and I don't know what the school committee, but I'm guessing it's probably reflected in what the school committees think. But I would think that the best course of action right now, given your concerns about this, and it's not like I don't have any.
I don't have concerns about what was presented for the test and stay removal today at all, myself.
I think as a committee, there is some questions about it, and I mean, certainly, safety, I have to think about that. I want to make sure it works. It's not something we go into and it ends up being worse, but I would say adding 2 variables is probably not prudent at this point. Because that's really your goal, to get the mask off, right?
In 6 weeks, we have an agenda to discuss our mask requirement. 6 weeks from now.
Yeah.
As the Omicron will continue to come down, I have every expectation that case counts are going to continue to come down, not only within our schools, but also within our community.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks from now, we're going to be in a different place than we are today than we were 6 weeks ago. And so I think 6 weeks for the new protocol to go into place and see how that evolves is an appropriate time, as we've already going to do, of reviewing our mask requirement on the 8th of March.
I wouldn't think you need to hear anything from the Department of Ed in terms of that letter. I'm not saying not to send it, I'm just saying that I don't, when you look at the benefits of it, if you're gonna wait 6 weeks anyway, we're gonna wait 6 weeks, you can just have a discussion about it in 6 weeks without sending a letter to say, hey, this is where we are, cases are down. And I don't agree with that logic that you're laying out, because it looks like we're going in that direction. Which makes, again, complicated to know if this is actually working, if the cases are really going down in the state. And if they're going down and we're doing good with this program, I don't really care why it's better, right, if they're coming down. It's just my 2 cents.
I think it's reasonable, it's a reasonable argument to make when it comes to what you just said. I think we'll kind of discuss that when it goes on forward. Decide to do. I think the idea of not sending the letter, but still planning to review our mask policy on March 8th is a reasonable decision.
Which we already voted on last meeting. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's harm in sending the letter unless Jeff, you're saying you think they'll take the letter and be like, oh, we're gonna delay your at-home test or something, but.
No,
I
I
can't
don't
believe
think
they
they
would do
would do that. I hope they won't do
Jeez.
that. No, I don't think they would be malicious like that, but,
Well, I don't think there's any harm in sending it, but yeah, I get it.
All right.
To Susan's point, I didn't weigh in yet, so I've got some ideas now. But to Susan's point about following the law of training, they're gonna point you to this page and that page and that study and this study. Someone said earlier tonight, I don't know if it was Meg or Julie said, you can find whatever science or data you wanna find, you can find it on whatever side you wanna find it. So we don't even need to wait until March 8th. We know what the data is now, we know this side, that side. I mean, I'm almost behind the motion to remove masks right now. And if we could, if you want to wait till March 8th, then wait till March 8th, but, I'm concerned about the other side of the equation is the learning. We know the data around learning impacts with masks, especially young kids. Can you tell us anything about the equity piece in this?
in terms of the learning,
Yeah, I mean, how do you teach a kid to learn with face on stuff? So we have, I think last meeting,
But let me just interrupt for a second.
yeah,
Because our task isn't to talk about masks tonight.
no, I'm referring to his letter and what we need the data for.
But, so that's incoming March 8th.
No, in regard to whether or not we sent a letter to get the data. That's my question.
Okay, it sounds like we're talking about masks.
Well, yeah, it's a letter to find out what we need the data for the masks, yeah.
So I think what he's saying is, we want to put the letter out there to get the information rather than just jumping the shark and saying, do we want to put the mask
thing on the table. We're trying to go through all of the avenues to get the information, to give the time for this program to happen. And
Yeah, what I want to know is, we're asking for data on what the masks do as far as COVID goes. But what data do we have we're going to look at for what the masks do to mental health, to learning, to the 17% of our kids in our district who are economically disadvantaged and don't have the ability to get extra help. Over the last few years, I saw last meeting that the English learning students has grown 625% over the last few years. How do you learn a foreign language with a mask covering your face, covering the teacher's face?
Are you asking for more bullet items on this letter?
If we need to, yeah.
Okay, so you would need to maybe make that proposal, or maybe there's general consensus.
Do we have any information on that?
Do we,
Does it
as a
exist?
school committee?
No, just Jeff. I know you're going to be looking at that throughout the year.
It's all research, it's getting out in the research base.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, there's plenty of articles out there, plenty of research. I mean, and we know that in terms of, younger kids like 1 in 5, watching teachers model, you need to, it certainly helps if you could see.
Right.
It
So they're not doing
also,
that.
it also affects socialization skills. So there's all of that data.
Speaking of socialization, I mean, I don't know if it's the place where, but the silent eating, did you get any information on that?
Oh, wait, we're going off, hang on to that, just put it aside for a second.
All right.
I'm assuming, Adam, that you did not include requesting that kind of information, social, emotional kinds of information, because you were looking for the information that they use to change this mask mandate to its current form, and that doesn't include that kind of data, is that correct?
Looking for the information that you use to put the requirement in place.
Right. So this doesn't include the kind,
I guess that's for them to answer.
that's a different set of data than maybe we would be requesting from the department. That might be, for instance, you might request that information from the local board of health, or from the NSC, or some other sources that we can't identify probably tonight.
I think Adam's point, asking for the information behind this decision in the first place, I mean, it should include that. Like, I would imagine if they're gonna put this in place, their response would be, well, there's no impact. Otherwise, why would they make the decision?
Or they think the benefits of masking outweigh the costs.
And if they do, then that would be their answer, yeah.
Are you proposing anything here, Mike, for us to
I
consider?
propose to remove the mask right now.
No, with this letter, we're talking about this letter. We can't remove the mask tonight, that's
I
not
would,
on the agenda.
I would propose to move our discussion from March 8th to February 8th.
Okay, that's not on the agenda tonight, Mike.
No, that's in the letter.
Yeah.
Says March 8th, right?
So are you saying to modify this reference on the letter?
Yeah, it just says, on March 8th, the committee will be reviewing its mask requirement. I'm suggesting we change that to February 8th.
I can't understand whether you're modifying this letter to send to DESI, or
Both,
whether you're proposing some different action.
both.
Okay, well.
I'm proposing we move our discussion to February 8th and update the letter to note that. If I need to make a motion for it, I'll motion for it.
Yeah, well, there are no motions on the floor right this moment at all, so,
No.
but in a minute, you'll have to decide what motion is pertinent to the motion on the floor, which will be the DESI letter first, and I mean, the protocol that Jeff was describing in the DESI letter, and then if you want to propose, like Adam did it the last time, to put something on an agenda, you can make a motion to put something on the agenda.
Okay.
Relevant to everybody? All right, I think we are ready for a vote. First, we have a couple of small business items here. The first is that I'm appointing Adam Wilbur to the negotiations subcommittee. In the fall, I appointed him as an alternate. And right now, he is being, it's turns out that that's really not the best way to do the negotiation committee. They need a steady crew in there, not people who might step in and step out. So I'm going to appoint Adam to serve on the negotiations committee with Megan and myself.
Can I decline that nomination?
Oh, yes, I didn't know that.
I'm going to decline, just based on workload right now.
Okay. Do we want to solicit a third person take his place?
You should have a third, because if you don't, if someone doesn't show up, you won't have a form. You won't be able to hold the negotiations.
The volunteers, that's.
Anybody else?
I'm drowning.
I'm sorry.
I'm drowning in work. I'm done.
Okay.
So on.
We have to vote tonight? We have to vote this tonight?
If
No,
both
it's
people show
not,
up,
it's not a vote, it's an appointment.
You have to appoint tonight, I mean?
No, if you think, I mean, well, the union is asking who is coming to the table. I mean, I can say there'll be three of us without naming people if you feel like. You wanna
they
think
just need
about
to
that?
count, because then,
Yes.
they want people out there, so
Right,
they don't
so
need to know if
the
it's them
names.
or her, they can just say count. They just can count.
All right, so you want to think about this and put it on the February meeting. All right. Move that to February 8th. Okay, and we have a motion to approve the creation of the Green Team Club at Tohoto. Moved by Mike. Second,
Second.
Adam. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Okay, now, we have a motion to approve the superintendent's Aggies recommendation that includes these three pieces: continue symptomatic testing as described in the proposal, discontinue contact tracing and test and stay, and offer DESI's rapid antigen at-home testing program option to families.
With the amendments. You want to make an amendment? You
What was
want
the
to-
amendment?
The information.
One amendment is changing Monday to Wednesday,
Oh,
and then number two. But it's not, and then the other amendment is the big thing on the,
that's just a letter, that's not really, that's just a communication on your part.
okay.
What do you mean Monday to Wednesday?
In the proposal, it says that the at-home.
Oh, it would be Wednesdays, yeah.
Okay. So is there a motion to accept the proposal with those three components as stated?
Second.
Second, Adam, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving Superintendent Aggies' recommendation to move to those three elements in the testing protocol?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And I as well, so the ayes have it, and we will move to this protocol as described here, and Jeff will manage the communications to families. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of all the components, and for, I know that the parent input has been, that you heard that, and also that's in your thinking as well. So appreciate your consideration. And so the last item then is there a motion to authorize the district to send an official letter to Commissioner Riley requesting evidence to be provided by February 25th, 2022 to demonstrate that masking students and are achieving an 80% vaccine threshold against the transmission of COVID-19.
Second.
Second, any discussion?
I'd like to change the date, and I'm making a motion after this. Discussion.
To make a motion, what?
I will-
Keeping the date or changing it.
You said I could make a motion after these votes to move the discussion to the 8th. I'm going to do that.
Well,
So,
I don't think we can
we need to
change
change
this
it.
letter before we change the meeting.
That's the point, yeah.
So do you want to entertain a motion to change the March 8th session to February 8th?
I don't think that's how it necessarily works. Motion on the table and then moved it, seconded. I mean, be amended, someone can amend it.
If what?
If someone wants to amend it, they could do that. There's a motion on the table. someone-
Yeah, I don't think we can amend it to a date we haven't approved.
Okay.
We could vote to not send a letter
Right.
when we go into discussion. I think it could be a reasonable thing to do, given
Mhm.
Mike's comments and some of Jeff's comments. So we can not send the letter and then talk about, as Mike suggested, earlier date to the masking requirement. Or the same date to the masking requirement. I do think that the information we learned from the Sandwich School Committee in particular and some others, seeing that they sent similar letters and received a lackluster response, for lack of a better term, could change the necessity or the rationale for sending this letter in the first place, because I don't expect we're going to get an answer that is different from what those other school committees have received.
Okay, so we will, that we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote on whether to send this letter, correct? All right? All right.
The letter as is.
As is.
Okay.
I'm going to vote no.
All right, fine. So I understand what, all right.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on this letter as is? Okay. Let's just go around, make sure I get everybody. Julie?
I'll vote no,
Do not send.
as is, yeah.
Adam?
I vote no.
Megan?
No.
Mike?
No.
Lori?
No.
And I am also a no. Okay, so the letter does not go out. Now, Mike, are you looking to make a proposal for
Yes.
a meeting date first,
I would like to move our discussion,
agenda item?
agenda item on the discussion on masks from March 8th to February 8th. I'd also like to have any information we could have on how masks impact teaching and learning
From where?
from anyone who has it.
Okay, can we, maybe we need to
From
break
Jeff.
those two things
From-
apart. Let's
from
deal with the
Jeff.
date first. Move discussion of masks from March 8th, 2022 to February 8th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Ready to vote? Let me go around and I'll make sure I hear everybody. Julie?
I'm gonna say, yes,
I'm going to move the discussion to February 8th.
I do, yeah.
And that's okay. Adam?
I vote yes.
Megan?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
And I am a no. Motion carries. I do need to look at the agenda for March 8th, because I know we have a lot of budget conversation and a few other items already on the agenda. So I'm not exactly sure how the time goes. If the meeting needs to go long because of the budget being such a central piece in February, are you going to go long on that meeting? You say nods.
Yeah.
As needed.
Okay, all right. So I just want to be clear here, committee can review and consider. So the topic that you're saying is being moved to February 8th is to review the mask requirement?
My motion.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, reading off your letter. Is that what
I
you're
think that's
saying?
actually, we're going to put on, we made a motion at the last meeting to put that on the agenda for March 8th. Mike's motion simply changes the date.
Review, right, review the mask requirement. And so, I guess I want to be clear on the agenda. what we're actually doing.
What does it say on March 8th?
Well, all we have is Adam's language is review the mask mandate.
So do you want to keep that, or are you looking to change that to review
No,
the
no,
mask?
I mean, I
mandate?
can, the language, okay, I'm just not exactly clear what it is the committee will be doing.
The outcome.
Well, no, what's the task? What's our task at the meeting? What are we actually doing? We're looking at the reentry plan and pulling out everything that says something about masks?
I mean, you can write it however you like, and simply it's saying review the mask requirement and whether it's still needed in our district. Is that fair?
So we're not gonna take a vote on February 8th, we're just gonna discuss it.
No, I think it's a vote for that.
Okay.
I think it could become a vote depending on the discussion topic.
I mean, the vote would be two parts, I get, you wanna
You
know.
can't do that.
No, not for open meeting law purposes. If we're gonna vote, we have to
They
say
don't
so
know,
on the agenda.
but we have to, it's gonna be a vote, it'll be on the agenda.
But the vote, the motion doesn't have to be stated. You don't know what's going to be, but it could be pro or negative. It could be after reviewing the policy, we vote to keep the mask in place until 2027, or it can be a vote to move up tomorrow, right?
If we're going to do that, we have to put that on the agenda.
Okay, so make it, we're going to review the mask requirement policy and vote whether to keep or change it to make it optional.
Okay, this sounds like a different motion.
Survey results in 2 weeks, good luck.
Make public comment period. Motion is to move the discussion was to review the requirement. I think the intent of that was to have a vote on whether to keep the requirement.
Whether to keep DESI's requirement in place, or whether to follow DESI's mandate,
Sure.
because their mandate will still be in place on February 8th.
We could very well
Mostly.
have more information that said, let me move on February 28th, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, wouldn't the district have to propose this to us? How are we just saying, okay, we're deciding, like, wouldn't Jeff have to?
Policy. We cover policy.
Yeah, but usually Jeff makes,
I mean, Jeff
recommendations is what she
Brought
said.
the reentry plan to us, Jeff brought this new DESI thing to us. Does Jeff want to review the masks?
I
Does
remember-
Jeff want to review the mask mandate?
So when I was in the policy subcommittee meeting in August, I remember discussing this with Susan. And the conversation at that point was, the full committee can change the policy whenever, however it likes by vote. So I think that's what we're talking about here.
So I'm still, so you're saying now that what you want on February 8th, what you're proposing here is a discussion to review the mask requirement and to vote whether to keep it as is or change it?
Sure. I mean, we heard parents speak tonight about how passionately they want this to be gone. I mean, that's our engagement right there.
Jeff, will you be able to put this in your newsletter? I think that this,
Wait, just hang on. This motion right now is to discuss, is to review the mask requirement on February 8th and to vote on whether to keep it or change it.
I think that's well said.
Is that covered?
Is there a second for that motion?
Sorry.
That was Mike's.
So that's my motion.
Mike's
All right, so I
motion.
move that, so it needs a second.
Second.
What's that? Is there a second?
Second.
Adam?
We already voted.
And we did on the first, and he's added on to it, actually.
oh, okay.
So, any further discussion?
So just a point, can I just ask a question, actually?
So let's say we come to February 8th and things look horrible. We can then decide at that point that we might want to move it up a little bit later. Like we're not committing to it an all or nothing on February 8th.
All or nothing. We're committing to discussing the mask requirements and
Right.
whether to keep them or not.
Right, but what I'm saying is during that, you can also, can you make a
Yeah, we
motion
can
to
decide.
extend it?
Yeah,
This is the way you stated it was to keep or change.
Yeah.
Changes to be defined,
Changes to what we discussed that day.
To change the mask mandate?
to change the requirement as it stated, so the agenda items for new mask mandate, and to vote whether to keep it as is or make any changes.
Mhm.
That change could be anything, not necessarily. Correct.
I guess I'm still confused as to if Jeff and the district has a say in if we're doing this. Is the district on board with this, or is this just, it seems like the school committee right now is kind of operating in a vacuum. I get it. I'm just,
The school district wasn't planning to make any.
is Jeff kind of,
You've given the schools you've given the school district the authority to follow the DES guidance, which is what we're doing. So in effect here, what you're doing is saying that, if you make a change here, you are saying that we are no longer following the DES guidance.
right,
That's what you're doing.
but I guess I'm asking, can we even come out and say, hey, we want to review the mask policy? Or does the district have to say, we want you to review the
No,
mask?
you voted it, you voted it originally,
Okay.
before you can amend it.
I think we're gonna hit as a discussion point here too, we're gonna hit a meeting problem, because, we know that the budget is already gonna take a major part of the February meeting, and we know that when this is on the agenda, we will hear from them and,
I have my enrollment, unless you want. me to-
yeah, no, we have a number of things already on the February agenda. And we know that many parents will come. We already have 2 meetings scheduled for February, and there's February vacation week in between. So we're talking about a meeting that is probably really realistically not tenable in one sit, unless you want to cast a separate meeting.
Can we just have a meeting just for the basketball finally? I think
But
that
it'd
would
be,
be.
if you want in February, it'd be the 3rd meeting in February.
All right, I see.
And it would have to be February 1st, because vacation is,
Maybe next week, yeah.
it would be next week.
Or the last week in February.
Oh, that's March 1st.
I mean, after listening to the
Right.
parents who spoke tonight, I think we owe it to them to do it.
Well, there's 2 parents who spoke tonight. They both had complete opposite opinions, so one wanted it and one just stormed out of here furious. So,
Yeah, I took most of hers around the nurses' protocol. But yeah, either way, I mean, 50% of the parents who spoke tonight were
So-
pretty passionate about it.
I mean, I guess the question I have with the motion on the table, which is currently to reword it how you put it, Susan, whether or not we would want to consider holding a meeting on February 1st to discuss the same topic.
to just do masks
Yeah.
on February 1st, which is a week from now, so, okay.
Do you want to change that, Mike, to February 1st?
Is that better for everybody?
So we have a meeting February 8th and 15th, is that right?
15th is the budget.
Is the budget, okay.
Yes, that's the public budget hearing. And then the 22nd is
Public
that's
budget
the school break, and then the following week would be March 1st. So that would mean we have meetings straight for the next 3 Tuesdays.
So we essentially have 3 options, either create a meeting on February 1st, create a meeting on March 1st, or stick with March 8th as the date we discuss this. Because I think the February 8th agenda, rightfully Susan's like, open as you said, that is massive.
We'll be here till midnight. if we do that.
Yeah, no, it just wouldn't be.
And I'm open for February 1st, I think wait till March 8th, just removes more from the students than maybe.
All right, so your proposal is for February 1st?
If that works for everybody?
I'm,
So I have a question, Susan. The February 15th, like, I'm going into, oh, it's a budget meeting, never mind.
The public budget hearing.
I just was trying to find the agenda, but then I saw their budget.
This is during, let's see, we had, that's the motion. Adam, are you seconding this motion to have this meeting on February 1st?
Yes.
Discussion. So my discussion point is, I have no idea what the race is to this all of a sudden. It feels sloppy to me. It doesn't feel thoughtful. It feels chaotic and unplanned for such an important topic. I would not be able to support it.
I agree, and I think we're talking about opening up ourselves to potential litigation and by going against DESI.
Are we?
We're not necessarily talking
Well,
about
that's part of the
I thought that was what
discussion.
Russ
That would be
We're not
part of the
talking-
discussion on February 1st.
No, I just think it's rushed, and if we are gonna, if the vote does pass, I think Jeff needs to make sure he makes note of it in his newsletter, because I think you're gonna get a lot of people that are
Yeah, I mean, if the whole
furious,
pass.
they didn't know about it.
It's gonna get communicated.
Well, I think that, you know, you make that same argument the other way.
Oh, I think one way or another, there's, yeah, no, I think it's
I
still.
think what we have to recognize is that this variant is contagious and it's not going anywhere. And it's not, the virus is slowing its speed, right? I mean, I just went through it, I did. And it was, for me and for our family, we were okay. I'm not saying that to take away from people that, you know, are struggling. But I watched 2 kids this past weekend have asthma attacks at basketball games. The time has come, the landscape is different, and we have to kind of start making decisions for the health of these kids breathing like this.
Oh, you think from the mask, the asthma attack from the mask?
No, I think it's dry air, cold air outside, you add a mask on top of that, it's labored breathing.
So is this your argument for why February 1st is important?
I can see why it's rushed, you know, I think this is a very hot topic, and I think community members will want to voice their opinion on this. Such a bummer that we already have 2 meetings scheduled for February, because this is such, can we move any of that stuff?
All budget stuff is,
Has to be 8th and 15th. So that's the only thing on that agenda is budget for the 8th and 15th. There's nothing else.
well, I don't believe so. No, it's a matter of fact, the town is already, I know Berlin's
Okay.
already saying, school committee needs to vote on this earlier, so.
Okay, so this is hard, yeah. I agree, I think that we should hear what people have to say.
I'd love to do a survey before we vote on this.
We're actually voting to put it on the agenda and to have a meeting on February 1st to discuss this.
And to vote.
Welcome public comment on the topic on the agenda of any meeting.
So you're saying we may not vote on
We
anything?
might vote to keep it in place as it is, we might vote.
There will be a vote.
There'll be a vote,
But it has to be a
Some
vote.
kind of vote on the first.
But I thought she has to put the vote in the agenda, so do we, yeah, so if we,
She did.
But we're not voting to take them off, is the point. It's a
No, we
vote.
might be.
Right, but one way or another, it's a vote, but,
It's a
May
vote
just
to leave
stay
it
put.
as is, or to
right.
whatever language
we're
comes out of the
voting, we're
discussion.
voting whether we keep the mask mandate or we change the mask mandate.
Right.
Next week is what people are proposing. Yeah, I agree with Susan, I think it's just, a little rushed. Not yet.
I mean, we've done it
Any other?
2 years.
I know. I
This is
think,
a lot of years.
I feel like it might be much better received like in March, when hopefully, like, to your point, cases are down, like,
Well, I
people
think
might
we'll
go,
see.
hey, yeah.
How
Okay,
interesting
you know.
people show up next week and take their opinion on it too.
Personally, I don't think a week or 3 weeks or a month is gonna change anybody's opinion. Their opinion is what their opinion is.
Are we ready to take a vote?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, the motion is to review the mask requirement on, the district's mask requirement on February 1st, an added meeting of the school committee, and to vote on whether to keep the mask requirement in place or to change it. Adam, Mike's motion, Adam seconded. Let me go around. Julie,
I'm gonna vote yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Megan,
No,
Mike,
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
And I'm a no. Motion carries. This is a new meeting for February 1st.
So Susan, just for clarity, that's the only thing that will be on the agenda.
That'll be the only thing on the agenda, to my knowledge.
Will you be able to put this in your weekly newsletter, Jeff?
Yeah, just tell me what you have a little school committee section down there, so just tell me.
I'll work with
The
Jeff
first
on
thing,
that.
we'll put it in, no problem.
We should probably look to do it in public. We're gonna have more public comment.
And it might be,
At least.
Oh my God,
it might be a good idea too to review with the public the role, the procedure for public comment. And I know when I came in to speak to school committee, I was unaware, so Cliff let me know that it's not a back and forth conversation.
Like tonight?
Have to speak, what's that?
Like-
Yeah, and then just to remind people so that they know it's not open disclosure.
Okay. I think that's everything. All right.
You're gonna mention about the silent meeting?
Oh, you want to get information about that?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
is that,
He's talking to you about the silent eating
Sounds good.
story that we heard.
That was just a misunderstanding. Yeah, and it was a miscommunication on my part. In the nurse's guidance, so when I looked at it, I thought, I didn't really want to address all of that stuff district-wide. And I said to them, to the principals and to the nurses, and to the nurses that I would just let the principals decide on some of those issues, some of the spacing issues. Some of them have more cases than others, some of them have lunches where they can't move kids a little further apart. But I wasn't specific enough, so, also, as you know, in the nurse's memo, there were things on there about silent eating, which I wasn't referring to. So when I said that to the principals, that was one of the things, and one of them decided to, one of the teachers, it wasn't conveyed to them that what I was really talking about was anything in that nurse's memo that had to do with distance. If they had space, and they weren't alienating kids, then it would be fine. So the piece about the eating in silence was in the memo. I just forgot to tell them not that piece. So,
So did that happen, but it was an error?
yeah, that's what happened, yeah. That one. Yeah.
All right.
I take the blame for that.
Thank you for clarifying. Motion to adjourn.
like,
Second, all in favor?
Aye.